Chapter 3906. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe did not believe that Long Yang would be so kind as to spare his life. No matter how sincere Long Yang's tone was, he was still on guard. There was only one thought in his mind. Why didn't Long Yang kill me? How can he not kill me? He must have some scheme. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe was silent. His mind spun quickly as he tried to guess what Long Yang's scheme was. However, he could not think of an answer even after thinking for 10 breaths of time. The reason Long Yang didn't kill me must be because he can get more benefit. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe was firm in this thought. He stared at Long Yang with a dark gaze and asked in a deep voice, "What do you want? If you're delusional enough to bribe me and subdue the entire Golden Crow clan, then I advise you to give up on that thought immediately." Long Yang gave a disdainful sneer. The Golden Crow tribe is a sinful tribe. They have already withered to such a state. You think I would like them? Don't measure the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Hurry up and swear. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe was skeptical. He reached out to take the jade scroll and checked the contents. He felt that Long Yang's scheme and goal would definitely be hidden in this jade scroll. When he used his consciousness to read the heavenly oath in the jade scroll, anger appeared on his face. Endless anger and humiliation surged in his heart. It was not that Long Yang had any scheme or goal. Other than restricting him and the Golden Crow tribe, there was no actual harm. However, the 1,000-word heavenly oath was meticulous, perfect, and covered all aspects. There was no loophole to exploit. If the leader of the Golden Crow tribe swore according to this, then he and the Golden Crow tribe could only give up on the idea. They would never be able to fight for the position of the Dragon Emperor. It would be disadvantageous to the divine fire grotto heaven, unless he dared to ignore the heavens and violate the oath. Otherwise, he would never have the chance to rise again. This was the real reason why the leader of the Golden Crow tribe was furious. Long Yang, you are too vicious, too ruthless. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe held the jade scroll and glared at Long Yang with hatred. His face also became very ferocious. Ji Tianxing said with an indifferent expression, "The fact that you are still alive and the Golden Crow race is not exterminated is already a great mercy. I was the one who made the oath to the heavenly Tao. You can choose not to recite it. I will let you know what true viciousness is." The Golden Crow patriarch was instantly speechless. His anger and grief quickly dissipated. He regained his composure and knew that Ji Tianxing was right. Long Yang's actions were indeed merciful. And he was the loser. He could only choose to obey or die. There was no other way. After a moment of silence, the Golden Crow tribe leader could only pick up the jade strip and recite the heavenly oath in a low tone. Ji Tianxing and Long Yang looked at him quietly. When the chief of the Golden Crow tribe was halfway through his heavenly oath, a series of muffled thunders resounded in the void. Strands of divine light also appeared around him. After he finished reciting the oath to the heavenly Tao, the thousands of rays of divine light that contained the laws around him became even more dazzling. In fact, a wisp of heavenly Tao power even appeared above his head. It was an almost transparent Tao rune that spun gently before disappearing rapidly. Under the power of the heavenly Tao, the Golden Crow tribe leader only felt immense pressure. He was uneasy and his heart was filled with fear. It was only when the divine light and Tao rune dissipated that the uneasiness and fear in his heart gradually faded. How could this be? I just made an oath and it actually triggered the power of the heavenly Tao? Could this be the true heavenly Tao oath? If I violate the oath just now, wouldn't the heavenly Tao really punish me? Those thoughts flashed through the mind of the Golden Crow tribe leader. Instantly, his heart was in a mess and he became even more fearful. Before he made the oath, he still had a trace of luck in his heart. Even if he violated the oath and rested for a few thousand years before dealing with the divine fire grotto heaven and snatching the position of the Dragon Emperor, he should be fine. However, the appearance of the power of the heavenly Tao and the Tao rune completely shattered his fantasy. He no longer dared to doubt or hope for a fluke. This heavenly Tao oath had already firmly restricted him and the Golden Crow tribe. A wise man submits to circumstances. Golden Crow tribe leader, congratulations, you have survived. Seeing that the Golden Crow tribe leader was still in a daze with a complicated expression, Long Yang waved his hand and shot out a divine light, snatching the jade slip away. At this moment, Ji Tianqing spoke again. Golden Crow tribe leader, you have already fulfilled the first condition. Next, I still want to ask you something. The Golden Crow tribe leader, who was in a daze, came back to his senses and looked at Ji Tianqing with dim eyes. Ji Tianqing asked, about 18 years ago, have you ever seen a human youth? Regarding Wu Han's situation, he briefly explained it. After the Golden Crow tribe leader finished listening, he shook his head expressionlessly. I have never seen or heard of him. Ji Tianqing stared at him sharply and observed for a moment. After confirming that he was not lying, he turned and left. Chief of the Golden Crow tribe, we'll meet again. Long Yang glanced at the chief of the Golden Crow tribe and left after saying that. The two of them flew side by side and disappeared into the void after a while. Looking at the direction they left, it was obvious that they were returning to the Dragon Realm. The Golden Crow tribe leader stood in place and muttered with a frown, they left just like that. Long Yang really let me and my tribe go? Until now, the Golden Crow tribe leader still found it hard to believe. This unexpected result made all the mental preparations he had made previously go to waste. Not long after, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being, who was hiding tens of thousands of kilometers away and secretly observing the situation, flew to the Golden Crow tribe leader's side. Swoosh! Arriving in front of the Golden Crow tribe leader, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being silently sized up his expression. He hesitated for a moment before saying, Big brother, I'm sorry. In fact, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being also thought that Long Yang would kill the Golden Crow tribe leader. However, he did not expect that the two of them did not even fight. Long Yang only forced the Golden Crow tribe leader to make an oath and then turned and left. This was unexpected and had no choice but to bite the bullet and explain to the Golden Crow tribe leader and apologize. However, before he could finish, the Golden Crow tribe leader raised his hand to stop him. You don't have to explain. I understand. The Golden Crow tribe leader expressionlessly glanced at the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being before turning and leaving with a cold expression. He did not return to the Divine Tree Star but instead flew in the direction of the Dragon Realm. Seeing him like this, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being knew that he had left a gap in his heart and would remember this debt. The Blue Scorpion Supreme Being hurriedly chased after the Golden Crow tribe leader and explained, Big brother, things are not what you think. I would never harm you or leave you behind. The Golden Crow tribe leader had no intention of stopping and said indifferently, it has already happened. What else is there to say? You want to live and fight for the position of Domain Master of the Scorpion Galaxy. This is your choice. You are not wrong. I was wrong. I should not have trusted you so much and entrusted my life to you. The Blue Scorpion Supreme Being could no longer refute and could only change the topic. Big brother, it's fine even if you don't forgive me. However, you are still injured and cannot travel through the void right now. You should go to the Divine Tree Star to heal your injuries first. It won't be too late to return to the Dragon Realm after your injuries have healed. Chapter 3907. No matter how Blue Scorpion Supreme Being tried to explain or persuade him, he chased after the Golden Crow tribe leader for 1,000,000 miles, but he still could not obtain the Golden Crow tribe leader's forgiveness. In the end, the Golden Crow tribe leader left expressionlessly. He dragged his heavily injured body and disappeared into the depths of the void at a leisurely pace. Blue Scorpion Supreme Being remained where he was. He looked in the direction the Golden Crow tribe leader had left, his face filled with hatred and unwillingness. Damn it. 3,000 years of friendship ended just like that. Without the help of the Golden Crow tribe and the deterrence of a peak godly king, how will I compete for the position of Starzone Master? Over the past 3,000 years, Blue Scorpion Supreme Being had been able to stand out in the Scorpion Star Zone and become one of the two overlords. His hard work and schemes were only part of the reason. More importantly, he had become friends with the Golden Crow tribe and the Golden Crow tribe leader, a peak godly king. But now, his many years of hard work had gone down the drain. The Golden Crow tribe would no longer be his backer and help. If that powerful enemy knew about this, how could he continue to develop? They would definitely destroy him and the forces under him as quickly as possible. At this thought, Blue Scorpion Supreme Being was filled with hatred for Ji Tianxing and Long Yang. Damn bastards, it's all your fault. You could have killed the Golden Crow tribe leader, and I could have taken over the Golden Crow tribe and strengthened my forces. But you let him go and put me in a difficult situation. Hypocrites, you will die a horrible death. Blue Scorpion Supreme Being cursed angrily before his anger dissipated. He sighed heavily and flew to the divine tree star to deal with the aftermath. The burial of heaven sword sped through the void. 3 days later, it left the Scorpion star zone and headed straight for the Dragon realm. Ji Tianxing and Long Yang stayed in the sword world. One was recuperating while the other was cultivating in seclusion. Ji Tianxing did not have the chance to fight with the Golden Crow tribe leader on this trip to the Scorpion star zone, nor did he test the true power of the burial of heaven. However, he did not feel that it was a pity. There would be plenty of opportunities in the future. After this trip to the Sky Scorpion star area, his foundation of the God Tao had become much more solid. He had also gained some new insights. His cultivation base had reached the peak of the 8th King God realm. Everything was ready, and the conditions were ripe. Thus, he entered the distorted spacetime to cultivate in seclusion, seizing the chance to break through to the 9th level of the God King realm. Long Yang stayed in the world inside the sword. He randomly found a place with abundant spiritual energy and consumed a divine pill to heal himself. His injuries were rather serious. Although they did not endanger his life or his divine path foundation, it was not something that could be healed in a short period of time. According to his estimation, he would need to recuperate in the Divine Flame Grotto for at least 10 years before he could fully recover. The void was always dark and cold, and one could not feel the passage of time. Half a month passed quickly. The burial of heaven crossed the void and returned to the vicinity of the Dragon realm, stopping in the void. Ji Tianxing had already been in seclusion for 25 months in the distorted spacetime of the Divine Pagoda. In more than 2 years, he had broken through to the 9th level of the Divine King realm 3 times. Unfortunately, his bottleneck was too stubborn. All 3 attempts ended in failure. Ji Tianxing could only stop his seclusion and fly out of the distorted spacetime and the world inside the sword. Swoosh! He appeared in the void, opened the world inside the sword, and awakened Long Yang. Long Yang left the world inside the sword and appeared in front of him. He looked at him with some confusion. Long Tian, why did you stop here? Aren't you coming back to the Dragon realm with me to the Crimson Dragon continent? Ji Tianxing shook his head and smiled. The Luwu clan and the Golden Crow clan have been dealt with. As long as the 2 clan leaders are still alive, they will not do anything to you because of the heavenly law oath. You can go back to the Divine Flame Grotto and recuperate in seclusion. I still need to go to the Crimson Dragon continent to continue my investigation and find Wuhan. Knowing that Ji Tianxing would not be returning to the Crimson Dragon continent, Long Yang looked regretful. We brothers have not seen each other for more than 1,000 years. Now that we have finally reunited, you are leaving? Forget it, I know you want to find your nephew as soon as possible, so I will not keep you. Once you find your nephew, we can have a good reunion in the future. Of course. Ji Tianxing nodded with a smile. Long Yang suddenly thought of something and exhorted, that's right, the situation in the Crimson Dragon continent is very stable. The Sacred Dragon Emperor is the strongest and there has not been any trouble in the past 1,000 years. From what I know, the Sacred Dragon Emperor had already gone to the outer domain a few hundred years ago to find an opportunity to break through to the God Emperor level. I'm afraid you won't be able to see him in the Sacred Dragon continent this time. Ji Tianxing had already thought of this and explained, it's okay. Even if his real body is in the outer domain, he will definitely leave a clone in the Sacred Dragon continent. It will be the same if I go to his clone to find out more information. All right. Long Yang nodded slightly. He was still a little worried and asked, that's right, you don't have much of a relationship with the Sacred Dragon Emperor, right? Also, you don't seem to have been to the Sacred Dragon continent and are not familiar with the situation there. How about this, I will go with you. Ji Tianxing hurriedly waved his hand to dissuade him. No need. You should return to the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven and recuperate in peace. With my current abilities and methods, I can do whatever I want in the Dragon realm without any danger. Moreover, the dragon realm is like my home. No matter which continent I go to, it will be like going home. Long Yang's eyes lit up and he hurriedly nodded in agreement. That's right. That's right. The dragon realm is your home, no matter how long you leave or where you go. As long as you return to the dragon realm, you will be home. Brother, you go to the sacred dragon continent first. I will go back to recuperate in seclusion. When my injuries are healed, I will contact you again. Then, we will leave the dragon realm and travel the outer domain to find an opportunity to break through to the God Emperor level and investigate the secrets of the 5 God Emperors. Long Yang did not have much attachment to power. He only wanted to fulfill his responsibilities and protect the peace of the Crimson Dragon continent. He wanted to protect the billions of people who lived and worked in peace. Apart from that, his biggest dream and goal was to investigate the secrets of the 5 God Emperors and find an opportunity to break through to the God Emperor level. That was his final goal. Ji Tianxing also understood this point. He smiled and extended his fist, bumping it against Chu Li's fist. All right, we have a promise. We will explore the mysteries together in the future. The two brothers bumped their fists, looked at each other and smiled. Then, they bid each other farewell. Long Yang broke through the space barrier of the Dragon Realm and returned to the Crimson Dragon continent. Ji Tianxing controlled the burial of Heaven's sword and continued to fly through the void, rushing to the sacred Dragon continent. 10 days after the two separated, Long Yang returned to the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven in the Crimson Dragon continent. After dealing with government affairs, he went into seclusion to recuperate. Ji Tianxing also broke through the space barrier of the Dragon Realm and stepped into the sacred Dragon continent. At this time, the Golden Crow clan leader, who was seriously injured and weak, returned to the vicinity of the Dragon Realm. He also broke through the space barrier and returned to the Crimson Dragon continent. He returned to the Grotto Heaven in a very low-key manner and went into seclusion to recuperate. Of course, before he went into seclusion, he issued an order to the Golden Crow clan. From now on, they were to know their place and not attack the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3908. It was just as Ji Tianxing had said. With the threat and restraint of the Heavenly Tao Oath, the Lu Wu and Golden Crows had completely settled down. The army of millions that they had gathered in the past year had completely collapsed and retreated in just a few days. All of his lofty words, passion, and fighting spirit had vanished into thin air. Even the Golden Crow and Lu Wu patriarchs were disheartened and had gone into seclusion to treat their wounds. They had left the affairs of their clans to the protectors and elders. The two patriarchs no longer had any ideas or fighting spirit for the future. They only had one request for their clansmen, to know their place and not provoke the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven. Instead, they should stay in their caves and cultivate. This sudden turn of events plunged the Golden Crow and Lu Wu clans into chaos and debate. The clansmen of the two clans and their subordinate factions could not understand what was going on. They had clearly held the advantage and had gathered millions of soldiers. As long as they attacked, they could have defeated the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven. But before the battle had even begun, the two clans had given up and retreated. With such a strong start and weak finish, the contrast was huge. Many people were puzzled, and it was difficult for them to calm down. The two patriarchs had gone into seclusion to treat their wounds. The protectors and elders knew the reason and the truth. But they could not explain it to their clansmen or their subordinate factions. That would be too humiliating. As time passed, the Lu Wu and Golden Crow clansmen began to complain. The subordinate factions of the two clans also felt indignant, humiliated, and resentful. The protectors, elders, and deacons could only watch the situation develop in a bad direction, but they could do nothing about it. Everyone knew that this was a bad start. In the next few hundred years, the subordinate factions of the two clans would definitely gradually break free from their control. In other words, the Golden Crow and Lu Wu clans would definitely weaken with each passing day. Whoosh! A pitch-black fissure suddenly appeared in the sky above the sacred dragon continent. With a flash of white light, a dragon youth wearing a white robe appeared high in the sky. He stood high in the sky, looking down at the sea of clouds and probing the surrounding mountains and rivers with his divine sense. His white robe and black hair danced in the wind. The fissure in the void behind him was also rapidly mending. The sacred dragon emperor lives in Yuanjua cave abode in Hidden Dragon Mountain. But where am I now? Where was Hidden Dragon Mountain? We need to find someone to ask about the situation and find out the route. With this thought flashing through his mind, Ji Tianxing flew past the sea of clouds at lightning speed and headed north. After traveling for less than 30,000 miles, he came across a city where the people of the monster clan gathered. It was a majestic city that had existed for thousands of years. More than 1 million demons lived in it. Although the city was protected by a divine array and tens of thousands of city guards, it was not difficult for him at all. With a little trick, he snuck into the city. His divine sense spread out and covered the entire city. Various voices from all directions entered his mind. After strolling around the city for a quarter of an hour, he understood the basic situation. This was the White Moon city of the Yong'an Empire in the Tianan region. The Tianan region was located in the southwest of the Holy Dragon continent. It was considered a rather remote place. Even so, a statue of the sacred dragon emperor was built in the city. The sacred dragon emperor's reputation was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people here. He was worshipped and revered by all the demons. It was a pity that Ji Tianxing found a few demons to ask about Hidden Dragon Mountain and Yuanjua's cave abode, but to no avail. Those citizens had only heard of this sacred ground, but did not know the direction or location. As a result, Ji Tianxing snuck into the city lord's residence and secretly restrained the city lord, who was a high-level divine lord. He found out the location of Hidden Dragon Mountain from him. Hidden Dragon Mountain is in the center of the continent. If you head northeast from here, you will reach it after passing through 20 regions. Senior, please spare my life. I have elders and children to take care of and am usually very benevolent to the citizens. Apart from occasionally embezzling a little money, I have never committed any major mistakes. The city lord, who was completely restrained, sat stiffly on the wooden armchair. He could not do anything other than speak. Ji Tianxing stood behind him and asked in a low voice. However, he could not see Ji Tianxing's face. Of course, even if he could move freely, he would not dare to look. He could deeply feel the powerful aura of a divine king emanating from Ji Tianxing. He was just a mere divine lord. How could he dare to resist? In fact, he was even more afraid that Ji Tianxing would kill him after asking. That would be an unjust and worthless death. Fortunately, after Ji Tianxing got his answer, he left silently. That pitiful city lord did not notice anything as he sat on the chair with a pale face. He cried bitterly and begged for mercy for a long time before the restraints on his divine body gradually dissipated. When he regained his movement and divine power, he realized that the mysterious expert had already left. The city lord, who had luckily managed to keep his life, slumped on the wooden armchair. He panted for a long time before calming down. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he could only pretend to be calm and pretend that nothing had happened. Ji Tianxing controlled the Sword of Burial of Heaven and left White Lunar City a long time ago. The Sword of Burial of Heaven flew across the sea of clouds and headed northeast. Ji Tianxing was about to enter the distorted spacetime to continue breaking through to the 9th level of the Divine King realm. At this moment, a spiritual light flew from the sky and landed in his palm. Swoosh! After the spiritual light dissipated, a communication jade slip appeared. Ji Tianxing picked up the jade slip and looked at it. Immediately, his eyes bloomed with joy and excitement. It's a message from the old black dragon. I haven't heard from him for 3 years. Back then, he had asked the Black Dragon Emperor to help him find out about Wuhan. In the end, there was no news from the Black Dragon Emperor. Now that he had finally sent a communication jade slip, Ji Tianxing was naturally excited. He thought that there was good news. His divine sense entered the jade slip, and the Black Dragon Emperor's voice immediately sounded in his mind. Little brother, I haven't sent you a message for 2 years. You must be anxious, right? Tell me honestly, have you been whispering behind my back, thinking that I have forgotten about you? Hearing this, Ji Tianxing could not help but smile. He thought to himself, "This old man knows me very well." The Black Dragon Emperor paused for a moment before continuing, "However, you have received my communication jade slip, so don't be too happy. In these 2 years, I have traveled all over the Black Dragon continent and the Sacred Dragon continent. I have visited several peak divine kings to help you find out about your son. It's a pity that they have not seen your son and do not know about this matter. So, you don't have to search everywhere and ask them. Only the Sacred Dragon Emperor is left. I have not seen him. Now, I am in outer space and on my way to the heavenly stalwart star territory. I am going to find the Sacred Dragon Emperor and ask him about this matter in person. You just stay in the Dragon Realm and wait for my news." After hearing the words in the communication jade slip, Ji Tianxing's eyes dimmed. He became increasingly worried and anxious. Now, besides the Sacred Dragon Emperor, all the peak divine kings in the Dragon Realm have already asked around, but there is still no trace of Wuhan. Wuhan, who took you away? Where are you now? Chapter 3909. When Ji Tianxing had just returned to the Dragon Realm, he had been full of hope that he would find Wuhan. But now, he had traversed the 4 continents and his hopes were dwindling. He even had a premonition that the Black Dragon Emperor would return empty-handed when he went to find the Sacred Dragon Emperor. After all, the Sacred Dragon Emperor had left the Dragon Realm a few hundred years ago and headed to the galaxy beyond. He definitely would not have had any interaction with Wuhan. Ji Tianxing's last ray of hope was quickly dissipating and turning into despair. If the peak godly king of the Dragon Realm did not save Wuhan, then only the divine world is left. Do I have to return to the divine world to continue my investigation? Ji Tianxing had already excluded the Sacred Dragon Emperor from his mind. He began to consider his next steps. Should he return to the divine world to continue his search for Wuhan? But on second thought, he felt that something was not right. The 5 strongest peak godly kings in the divine world have already become god emperors. They are not in the divine world. They are in the deepest part of the void, searching for vast amounts of cultivation resources and studying that foggy star. There are only a few peak godly kings left in the divine world. But if I cannot find Wuhan in the Dragon Realm, I can only return to the divine world and search the 5 continents. After making up his mind, he gathered his thoughts and sent a message to the Black Dragon Emperor to express his gratitude. Then, he entered the distorted space-time and went into seclusion to break through to the 9th level of the Godly King realm. The Burial of Heaven did not stop flying and continued to rush towards Hidden Dragon Mountain. If it was someone else, they might have listened to the Black Dragon Emperor's advice and waited patiently somewhere for news. But he was not willing to wait for the Black Dragon Emperor to find the Sacred Dragon Emperor. Firstly, the galaxy beyond was too vast. It would be months before the Black Dragon Emperor found the Sacred Dragon Emperor. Secondly, he wanted to find his son and the Black Dragon Emperor was only helping him. How could he not be concerned and wait for someone else to help him find out the truth? The Burial of Heaven flew across the sky at lightning speed. It did not encounter any danger along the way and did not stop. Ji Tianxing stayed in the distorted space-time and started to break through with all his might. With the experience of his previous failures, he gradually grasped the essentials and understood the opportunity to break through. This time, his breakthrough process was much smoother. Half a year had passed, and he had not failed. He was still persevering and accumulating strength to break through the bottleneck. Unknowingly, after 7.5 days of traveling, the Burial of Heaven sword was about to reach the central region of the Holy Dragon continent. Ji Tianxing also officially went into seclusion for an entire year in the distorted space-time. Finally, he had broken through the bottleneck and reached the 9th level of the Divine King realm. After the breakthrough, Ji Tianxing's divine power surged, and hundreds of divine patterns of laws circled around him. His aura changed slightly. His strength had also increased by 6 times, and his aura had become even more mysterious and reserved. In the past, he was as sharp as a divine sword, and his aura was sacred and dignified. But now, he was developing in the direction of returning to his original state, becoming more and more mysterious and low-key. This was probably the difference between his divine Tao and other divine kings. The surging divine power surged for 9 days and 9 nights before calming down. Ji Tianxing then went into seclusion to meditate for 3 months before ending his seclusion. When he came out of seclusion, the burial of Heaven's sword had also reached the central region of the Holy Dragon continent and entered the Hidden Dragon mountain range. This vast mountain range was the head of the Holy Dragon continent's dragon veins. Divine power gathered within a radius of 500,000 miles. Countless spiritual beasts, divine beasts, and rare treasures were nurtured there. The Hidden Dragon mountain range had also become a true sacred ground for cultivation, and a treasure trove for adventurers. However, the adventurers who came from all over the place only moved around the outer regions. No one dared to enter the depths of the Hidden Dragon mountain range to avoid disturbing the powerful figures in Yuanjua's cave abode and offending the sacred Dragon Emperor. But the burial of Heaven's sword did not have such concerns. It flew across the sky at lightning speed and reached the deepest part of the Hidden Dragon mountain range. Tens of thousands of miles ahead, a brown mountain peak appeared. It was faintly discernible in the white sea of clouds. The mountain peak, which had a radius of tens of miles, was like a floating island that floated high in the sky and in the sea of clouds. There was a magnificent divine palace on the mountain peak. Under the scorching sun, it shone with a dazzling golden light. There was also a sky full of 5-colored divine light that formed a 5-colored rainbow that hung above the sea of clouds. Thousands of silver-armored guards were stationed around the majestic divine palace. They were led by more than 10 golden-armored divine kings. Although most of the divine kings were lower-level divine kings, and only 4 were middle-level divine kings. But such a solemn formation was not something that could be arranged by an ordinary power. The burial of Heaven gradually slowed down and sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianxing. "We have arrived. The entrance to Yuanjua's cave abode is in front." Ji Tianxing heard its voice transmission and left the distorted spacetime and flew out of the sword world. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianxing appeared above the sea of clouds. He kept the burial of Heaven's sword, stepped across the sea of clouds, and flew towards the mountain peak that was surrounded by divine light. The so-called Yuanjua's cave abode was actually a blessed grotto heaven. The entrance to the grotto heaven was in the divine palace on the mountain peak. Ji Tianxing descended from the sky and landed on the square outside the golden divine palace. Immediately, 4 golden-armored divine kings rushed over with a large group of silver-armored guards and surrounded him. Although the guards were wearing armor and holding swords, they were cautious as if they were facing a great enemy. But the 4 golden-armored divine kings did not show any hostility. They knew that the sacred Dragon Emperor had not shown himself for hundreds of years, much less had any feud with anyone. This young man from the dragon tribe who had suddenly come to visit probably had a request and was not here to seek revenge or cause trouble. "This. Young master, what can I do for you?" The leader of the golden-armored divine kings was at the 6th level of the divine king realm. He was the commander of the thousands of guards. He hesitated for a while before addressing Ji Tianxing as young master and asked for the purpose of his visit with a serious expression. Although he could vaguely sense that Ji Tianxing's power was unfathomable. But Ji Tianxing looked too young and he could not address him as a senior. Ji Tianxing looked around indifferently. His gaze swept across the guards and the golden-armored divine kings, and finally landed on the dazzling divine palace. "I have an important matter and have specially come to the Yuanjua Grotto Heaven to visit the sacred Dragon Emperor. Please inform him." Seeing that Ji Tianxing had a dignified appearance and was well-spoken and mysterious, the 4 golden-armored divine kings heaved a sigh of relief. The commander cupped his fists and bowed. He asked again, "Young master, I am very sorry, but the Dragon Emperor is not in the Yuanjua Grotto Heaven. Please return." Ji Tianxing had already expected this result. He said directly, even if the sacred Dragon Emperor's original body is not here, his avatar should be in the Grotto Heaven. "I am Long Tian, the new Dragon Emperor of the Star Source continent. I have an important matter to discuss with the sacred Dragon Emperor. Go and report it as it is." The 4 golden-armored god kings and the many silver-armored guards immediately stiffened when they heard Ji Tianxing announce his identity. They were filled with deep shock. The commander of the guards did not dare to delay any longer. He hurriedly bowed and said, "So it is the new Dragon Emperor. Please wait for a while. I will go and report it." Chapter 39:10. In the current dragon realm, the dragon tribe was the noblest of the noblest. No matter where Ji Tianxing went, he would be treated courteously. No one dared to offend him. Moreover, he was very powerful and had an extraordinary aura. The sacred dragon emperor was also very peaceful. He did not interfere in any conflicts and rarely offended anyone. The generals and god kings under his command were naturally influenced by him. They treated the guests rather politely. Ji Tianxing remained in the square to wait. The commander of the guards personally sent out a transmission jade letter to report the situation to the emperor's clone. The other 3 golden-armored god kings and the several hundred silver-armored guards all studied Ji Tianxing curiously as they discussed secretly through communication techniques. He is the new dragon emperor of the stellar source continent. Isn't he too young? 2 years ago, I heard that the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's Xuanji Grotto Heaven had been conquered. So it was him. As expected, the waves behind the Milky Way surpass the waves in front, and the waves in front are crushed to death on the riverbank. Although this new Dragon Emperor has an extraordinary aura and is mysterious and low profile, I don't think he is. Could he be an imposter? Are you crazy? Who would dare to impersonate another Dragon Emperor? Moreover, he is the new Dragon Emperor of the stellar source continent. That's right. Long Tian defeated the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and took control of the stellar source continent. He has a death feud with the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. You dare to impersonate Long Tian? Aren't you afraid of being killed by the old subordinates of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor? These guards and commanders guarded the hidden Dragon Mountain all year round and did not have the chance to go out. Therefore, they only heard a little about what had happened in the stellar source continent and did not know the details. At this moment, they were only quietly sizing up Ji Tianxing and discussing secretly. They did not have any other thoughts. After all, the change of power in the stellar source continent and the change of the Dragon Emperor had nothing to do with them. Ji Tianxing stood in the middle of the square with his hands behind his back and a calm expression. Of course, he knew that everyone was sizing him up and discussing him. But he didn't care and just waited expressionlessly. After a quarter of an hour or so, the Grand Commander of the Guards received a reply. After reading the message, he hurriedly smiled at Ji Tianxing and cupped his fists. Lord Dragon Emperor, His Majesty Dragon Emperor has agreed. Please follow me. After that, the Chief Commander personally led Ji Tianxing into the Golden Palace. There was a heavily guarded array inside the Divine Palace, which was the entrance to Yuanjua Paradise. The Grand Commander took out his identity jade token and personally cast a spell to activate the array and open the entrance. Shua. The two stepped into the formation and left the Divine Palace in a flash, entering the Yuanjua Paradise. In the past few years, Ji Tianxing had seen too many blessed paradises. To be honest, the blessed enclave in the Dragon Realm hardly gave him a sense of novelty. Even though Yuanjua Grotto Heaven was filled with god power, the mountains, rivers, and sceneries were unique. In the depths of the Grotto Heaven, there was a group of palaces built at the peak of the mountain range. But when he saw it, his reaction was dull. He didn't feel that it was novel or ingenious. Shua. Ji Tianxing followed the chief commander and flew for 45 minutes before landing at the peak of the mountain among the palaces. This group of palaces was very quiet. Nearly 100,000 demon experts and strong practitioners lived in more than 200 palaces. But besides the patrolling guards on duty, there was basically no one else. Most people were cultivating in seclusion in the various palaces. The entire group of palaces was filled with a peaceful, and leisurely atmosphere. Dragon Emperor, please come with me. The chief commander led the way. He led Ji Tianxing through a square and stepped into the majestic sacred Dragon Divine Palace. This was the residence of the sacred Dragon Emperor. It was also the place where he handled government affairs and gathered officials to discuss important matters. The palace had 6 floors and was 1,000 feet tall. It was very spacious. The first floor was the conference hall. It was dazzling, spacious, and bright. On both sides of the hall were the guest halls and the living quarters of the Dragon Emperor's personal guards. According to the common rules of the Dragon Realm, the chief commander led Ji Tianxing into the Divine Palace and settled him in the guest hall. After ordering the maids to serve tea and spirit fruits, the chief commander took his leave. Ji Tianxing sat in the guest hall and waited for a while. Then, a personal guard of the Dragon Emperor rushed over. After bowing to him, he led him to see the sacred Dragon Emperor. Logically speaking, Ji Tianxing and the sacred Dragon Emperor were only acquaintances and did not have much of a relationship. Under such circumstances, it was normal for the sacred Dragon Emperor to receive him in the guest hall. If the two of them had a close relationship, the sacred Dragon Emperor would most likely receive him in the study room. But Ji Tianxing did not expect the personal guard to lead him into a secret passage and to the door of a secret chamber. After bringing him in, the guard bowed and excused himself. Ji Tianxing looked at the quiet and empty passage, then looked at the stone door of the secret chamber, which was engraved with array patterns. He could not help but frown. What is the sacred Dragon Emperor doing? Receiving me in the secret chamber? Just as this thought flashed across his mind, the stone door of the secret chamber opened. An elderly voice came from the secret chamber, which was filled with 5-colored divine light. Long Tian, my young friend, come in. This voice was not unfamiliar, but neither was it familiar. After all, Long Tian had only met the sacred Dragon Emperor a few times. Ji Tianxing stepped into the secret chamber, passed through the cloud-like 5-colored divine light, and came to the center of the secret chamber. There were many bookshelves and shelves in the secret chamber. They were filled with elixirs, materials for weapon refinement, and various ancient books. At the head of the table, there was a wide jade table and a purple jade throne. A benevolent elder with white hair and beard, dressed in a white dragon robe, was sitting on the throne, smiling at him. There were also a few jade scrolls on the jade table, as well as more than 10 ancient books. Ji Tianxing sized up the furnishings in the secret chamber, then looked at the white-haired elder. He naturally knew that the white-haired elder was the sacred Dragon Emperor's clone. Seeing that the sacred Dragon Emperor's clone was normal and smiling, Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and bowed. Ji Tianxing pays his respects to senior sacred Dragon Emperor. The sacred Dragon Emperor was of the same generation as his master, the heavenly Dragon Emperor. It was natural for him to greet him as a junior. The sacred Dragon Emperor nodded slightly. After looking at him for a while, he smiled and said, "You look alike. You are indeed 70% alike." Hearing this sentence, Ji Tianxing frowned and asked doubtfully, "Senior Sacred Dragon, you are?" The Sacred Dragon Emperor waved his hand and quickly changed the topic. 2 years ago, I heard that you caused a huge commotion in the Star Source continent and took over the position of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. At that time, I thought that I would be able to see you very soon. You have left the Dragon Realm for more than 1,000 years. Now that you have returned to the Dragon Realm, reached the peak of the Divine King Realm, and took over the position of the Dragon Emperor, you should be able to comfort your master's spirit in heaven. Ji Tianxing nodded. After exchanging some pleasantries with the sacred Dragon Emperor, he went straight to the point. Senior Shenglong, to tell you the truth, I came to visit you this time because I want to ask you about something. 18 years ago. Before he could say how Wuhan was rescued, the sacred Dragon Emperor asked with a smile, "Long Tian, I also want to ask you about something. Do you want Wuhan to have the surname Ji? Or Long?" Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 39:11. The Emperor's words stunned Ji Tianxing. He had not expected the Emperor to ask such a question. Before he could say that Wuhan had been rescued, the Emperor had already mentioned Wuhan's name. He immediately understood what this meant. Before coming to Yuanjua Grotto Heaven, he had not harbored much hope. He had not expected the Emperor to give him such a huge surprise. "Senior Sacred Dragon, you mean, you have seen my son Wuhan? You were the one who saved him?" Ji Tianxing was filled with surprise and disbelief as he asked agitatedly. The sacred Dragon Emperor nodded with a smile. Seeing that he had admitted it, Ji Tianxing was filled with endless surprise and relief. All these years of hard work and preparation had not been in vain. Heaven did not let down those who worked hard. He had finally found Wuhan. "Senior Sacred Dragon, thank you for saving my son Wuhan. Long Tian will remember your kindness for life." Although Ji Tianxing was very surprised and agitated, he did not lose his composure. He hurriedly bowed to the Emperor to express his gratitude. The sacred dragon emperor smiled and said, "In the past few years, as Wuhan gradually grew into a young man, I increasingly felt that his appearance and eyes were somewhat familiar. I thought hard for a long time before I remembered that he looked very similar to you, at least 70% similar, but I still did not understand why his surname was Ji and not Long. Also, when you left the dragon realm more than 1,000 years ago, didn't you go to the divine realm? How did your son appear in the lower realm?" After hearing the sacred dragon emperor's words, Ji Tianxing finally understood why the sacred dragon emperor had said similar when they first met. Indeed, 70% similar. However, Ji Tianxing did not know how to answer the emperor's question. If it was Arphiuchus or Long Yang who asked these questions, he might not hide it. But he did not have such a close relationship with the emperor. He was hesitating whether to tell the truth. After deliberating for a moment, Ji Tianxing decided to change the topic. "Senior Sacred Dragon, where is Wuhan now? Is he in Yuanjue Paradise?" The Sacred Dragon Emperor raised his brows and said with a teasing smile, "He is not in the Grotto Heaven. He has always been in outer space and has not come to the Dragon Realm. Looks like you don't intend to answer this old man's question. Fine, this must be your secret. When you are willing to answer, this old man will ask you again." Although Ji Tianxing did not answer, the Sacred Dragon Emperor had lived for more than 20,000 years and was very meticulous. He had already guessed some things. However, since Ji Tianxing was unwilling to tell him, he could not force him. Ji Tianxing also felt a little strange, so he asked, "Senior Shenglong, have you ever asked Wuhan these questions?" The Sacred Dragon Emperor smiled and said somewhat helplessly, "I still can't figure it out, so I asked Wuhan indirectly. Unfortunately, this kid is just like you when you were young, always silent and cold. I tried to ask him a few times, but he pretended not to know. After all, he is a junior and my last disciple. Since he is unwilling to answer, I will not force him, so I can only ask you. Senior, you actually accepted Wuhan as your last disciple?" Ji Tianxing was instantly shocked and his expression became a little strange. It was not anger or unhappiness, but he did not expect the Sacred Dragon Emperor to accept Wuhan as his disciple. One must know that the Sacred Dragon Emperor had followed the example of Fengtian Dragon Emperor and never married or had any children. In the previous 20,000 years, he did not even have a single disciple. And now, he had accepted Wuhan as his last disciple. The so-called last disciple meant that he would close the door and not accept any more disciples. How could Ji Tianxing not be surprised? The Sacred Dragon Emperor looked at him with a smile and stroked his beard. "Long Tian, I saved Wuhan's life. I saw that he had outstanding talent and was 1 in a billion, so I wanted to cherish him. Although I did not discuss this with you, I am your senior and am on good terms with your master. Now that I am informing you, you won't blame me for acting on my own, right? You look as if you have me in the bag. Even if I object, it is useless, right?" Ji Tianxing muttered in his heart. But he definitely could not say that openly. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior, you are highly respected and also the most senior Dragon Emperor in the Dragon Realm. It is Wuhan's honor that you are willing to accept him as your disciple. I've troubled Senior to take care of and teach Wuhan for more than 10 years. Thank you, Senior." The Sacred Dragon Emperor smiled and waved his hand. "Don't be so polite. We are all family. This is what I should do as his master." Ji Tianxing was concerned about Wuhan's situation and asked again, "Senior Sacred Dragon, how is Wuhan now? Where has he been living and cultivating all these years?" The Sacred Dragon Emperor waved his hand and shot out a ray of divine light. He took out a chair and placed it in front of Ji Tianxing. "This is a long story. Sit down and we can talk slowly." Ji Tianxing nodded in agreement. They sat opposite each other at the jade table and chatted as they drank tea. The Sacred Dragon Emperor looked as if he was reminiscing. He said slowly, "Ever since your master, Dragon Emperor Fengtian, disappeared, the most respected powerful person in the Dragon Realm is gone. I am not afraid to tell you this. He was our senior and backbone. Without our backbone, I, the Black Dragon Emperor, the Red Dragon Emperor, and the rest felt uneasy. Moreover, your master left behind some clues before he disappeared, which made us feel very strange. We discussed it countless times and finally came to a conclusion. The dragon realm was punished by the heavens and dozens of races became sinners. No matter how much they cultivated, the powerful people in the dragon realm could not break through the divine king realm and reach a higher realm. So more than 800 years ago, my real body left the dragon realm and went to outer space. I operated in the heavenly lead star domain for more than 200 years and successfully controlled it as the master behind the scenes. Although the cultivation resources and environment in outer space are slightly inferior to those in the dragon realm. But in outer space, there is a higher chance of surpassing the divine king realm. So my real body remained in the heavenly lead star domain and only left an avatar here to guard the Yuanjua Grotto heaven. Ji Tianxing had thought that the sacred dragon emperor would start his story from 18 years ago. But he did not expect the sacred dragon emperor to start from 1,000 years ago, when Dragon Emperor Feng Tian disappeared. Even though he already knew about the sinners and the heavenly punishment. But the sacred dragon emperor was in high spirits and he could only listen patiently. The sacred dragon emperor raised his teacup and took a sip before continuing his story. I was the first to leave the dragon world and occupy an extraterrestrial galaxy. After I took control of the heavenly lead star domain, the other dragon emperors also entered outer space and tried to establish their power. 500 years ago, a fellow who called himself the Netherworld Emperor led a large group of divine kings and divine lords into the heavenly lion star domain. The heavenly lion star domain is right next to my heavenly lead star domain. The two star domains are only 3 billion miles apart. Book Guest Residence Reading Website. Chapter 39:12. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows when he heard the words Netherworld Emperor and Heavenly Lion Galaxy. He seemed to have guessed something. However, he did not interrupt the sacred dragon emperor and listened patiently. The sacred dragon emperor looked angry as he recounted. The Netherworld Emperor was impatient and irritable. The moment he entered the Heavenly Lion Galaxy, he started a massacre and forcefully occupied various worlds. It only took him 20 years to control the Heavenly Lion Galaxy with iron and blood. Then, he enslaved the natives of the Heavenly Lion Galaxy and forced everyone to mine for cultivation resources. He plundered resources and treasures without restraint. Although I am ashamed of his actions, that was the Heavenly Lion Galaxy. However, that was the Heavenly Lion Star region's matter. I had never thought of snatching your territory, so I did not intervene. However, even though I did not stir up trouble, that bastard took the initiative. Not long after he occupied the Heavenly Lion Galaxy, he led a group of godly kings into the Heavenly Stalwarts Galaxy in a futile attempt to snatch territory. I had long seen his ambition and had always been wary of him. Therefore, before he entered the Heavenly Stalwarts Galaxy, I had already set up a large number of troops and ambushes. That battle lasted for 3 years and destroyed dozens of planets and several worlds. Although this old man is not the Netherworld Emperor's opponent, the god kings under his command have been slaughtered by the soldiers under this old man's command. The Netherworld Emperor lost miserably in that battle and lost nearly 100 godly kings. He could only retreat pathetically to the Heavenly Lion Galaxy. Haha, this is the difference between winning the hearts of the people and not. Although I occupied the Heavenly Stalwarts Galaxy, I never bullied the people and was very generous to my soldiers. For hundreds of years, I have been trying to maintain the peace of the Heavenly Stalwarts Galaxy and imparting the way of cultivation. The entire Heavenly Stalwarts Galaxy respected me and obeyed my orders. The soldiers also fought bravely. However, the Netherworld Emperor was cruel and ruthless. He destroyed the Heavenly Lion Galaxy until it was unbearable to look at. Even the soldiers under his command held grudges against him. They obeyed him in public but opposed him in private. It would be strange if he did not lose. Although the Sacred Dragon Emperor did not talk about that battle in detail, he was still full of satisfaction and pride. Ji Tianxing said calmly, "That Netherworld Great Emperor should be the god of the underworld, right?" When he invaded Tian Kuei Star Zone, he had already broken through the God King realm and reached the God Emperor realm. The Sacred Dragon Emperor looked at him in surprise and asked, "I haven't even finished speaking, how did you know? Do you know the god of the underworld?" Ji Tianxing sneered, "Not only do I know him." The Sacred Dragon Emperor suddenly thought of something and was enlightened. I understand now. You have a feud with the god of the underworld. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken action to capture Wuhan and even tried to bring her back to the divine world. It was obvious that the upper realm powerhouse who opened the passage between the two worlds, saved the Heaven Punisher clan, and captured Ji Wuhan was the projection of the god of the underworld's clone. Ji Tianxing had already guessed this earlier, so he wasn't surprised at all. The Sacred Dragon Emperor continued, "Since that battle more than 400 years ago, I have formed a feud with the god of the underworld. Since then, I've been keeping an eye on him and investigating his background. Later on, I found out that he came from the divine world and had broken through the God King realm to reach the so-called God Emperor realm. While I was hiding in Tian Kuei Star Zone to recuperate, I also kept an eye on the god of the underworld's movements to prevent him from making a comeback. But later on, I found out that he seemed to have something more important to do. He did not stay in Tian Lion Star Zone and left with a group of God Kings and Sir Gods. I don't know where he went. I sent many spies to infiltrate Tian Lion Star Zone to secretly investigate the god of the underworld's secrets. 300 years ago, I found out a shocking secret. Not only the god of the underworld, there were 4 other peak god kings in the divine world who had also broken through to the God Emperor realm. To be honest, I did not feel good about it and felt that it was very unfair. Our dragon realm did not even have a single God Emperor, but there were 5 in the divine world. Moreover, those 5 God Emperors were all in outer space, each occupying a star zone. More than 200 years ago, I personally killed one of the god of the underworld's trusted aides. He was a 9th stage God King who stayed in Tian Lion Star Zone as the deputy region lord to manage affairs on behalf of the god of the underworld. It was only after I refined the memories of that divine king's divine soul that I found out that the Netherworld Divine Emperor was doing something unimaginable. At this point, the Sacred Dragon Emperor deliberately paused to whet Ji Tianxing's appetite. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianxing replied without hesitation, "The god of the underworld not only controlled the Reincarnation Island in the divine world and occupied Tian Lion Star Zone, but also extended his hand to the lower realm. He secretly supported the Heaven Punisher clan in the lower realm and used the God Emperor's method to interfere with the Heavenly Dao's will and avoid the heavenly tribulation for the Heaven Punisher clan. The Heaven Punisher clan dominated the lower realm and had the intention of sweeping through all 3,000 worlds." The Sacred Dragon Emperor was even more surprised. He looked at Ji Tianxing with bright eyes and said in a complicated tone, "You brat, how do you know everything? This old man wanted to keep you in suspense. How boring." Ji Tianxing chuckled and said, "Continue. After you finish, I will answer your previous question." "That's more like it." The Sacred Dragon Emperor gave a satisfied smile and continued, "When I found out about this secret, I was very surprised and puzzled. I could not understand. That guy had already become the God Emperor and could use the power of the Heavenly Dao. Why was he still thinking about the lower realm? There were only mortals in the lower realm. There were no people or treasures that could tempt him. But I later found out that he supported the Heaven Punisher clan in the lower realm because he wanted to find something. It seemed like he wanted to find a treasure map. I guess it was something like a treasure map. After understanding all this, I felt that this was not a simple matter. A treasure map that the god of the underworld spent so much effort on was definitely a divine Dao treasure. So I also started to pay attention to the lower realm's movements and kept an eye on the god of the underworld's movements. From then on, the god of the underworld did not appear for more than 200 years. I did not know what he was up to. Until 18 years ago, I suddenly discovered that the god of the underworld had returned to Tian Lion Star Zone. Moreover, he had built a sacrificial altar and used sorcery to interfere with the Heavenly Dao's will and forcefully opened the passage between the two realms. He had actually sent a clone to the lower realm through the passage between the two realms. At that time, I knew that something big must have happened in the lower realm. I have a grudge against the god of the underworld. Whatever he wants to do, I will definitely stop him." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing gave a gratified smile. He continued, "So you also spent a huge amount of resources to build a sacrificial altar and gathered the power of many godly kings to forcefully open the passage between the two realms. However, you opened the passage a little late. By the time you opened the passage, the matter in the lower realm had already ended. At that time, The clone projection of the god of the underworld was preparing to return to the upper realm with Wuhan and a youth from the Heavenpiercer clan. So you acted decisively and injured the clone projection of the god of the underworld and saved Wuhan, senior sacred dragon, am I right? Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 39:13. Now that the truth was out, everything made sense. 18 years ago, Ji Tianxing did not know who the clone projection was, nor did he know who the powerful figure who had saved Wuhan was. Now, the emperor's recount of the past made Ji Tianxing understand everything. The sacred dragon emperor stared deeply at Ji Tianxing and said meaningfully, "You know so much. Could it be that you were also there?" Ji Tianxing smiled but did not explain. Continue. The emperor rolled his eyes and stroked his white beard. "I am only a king of gods and do not have the means like the god of the underworld to send a clone projection down to the lower realm. However, I can think of a way to open the passage between the two realms. Although my clone cannot descend to the lower realm, I can cast spells from a distance and injure the clone projection of the god of the underworld. After all, his clone projection descending to the lower realm is defying the will of the heavenly Tao and his power will be limited. I will destroy what he wants to do. I will also take back what he wants to take away. Although I did not descend to the lower realm at that time and did not know what happened there, nor did I know Wuhan. But I am very glad that I made the decision back then." At this point, the emperor once again showed a proud and smug expression. Ji Tianxing nodded in agreement and said in a complicated tone, "Yes. Fortunately, you saved Wuhan. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. The god of the underworld is very cruel and vicious. He brought Wuhan to the upper realm and most likely refined her into a puppet, then let her fight with me and my father. After all, the god of the underworld hates me to the core. Killing me may not be enough to appease his hatred." The emperor's eyes brightened and he asked expectantly, "I did not guess wrongly. You really have a deep grudge against the god of the underworld. Tell me quickly, what exactly is going on? You must not have been in the heavenly realm for the past 1,000 years. You ran to the lower realm, right?" Given the emperor's intelligence, after suspecting Ji Wuhan's identity, he would definitely make many guesses and associations. However, he could not be sure until he met Ji Tianxing. Now that the answer was about to be revealed, he couldn't wait any longer. Ji Tianxing could tell that the sacred dragon emperor's personality was still the same as before. He was gentle and kind, and a little talkative. He also sincerely loved and valued Wu Hen. Since that was the case, Ji Tianxing decided not to hide the truth from the emperor. After all, he already had peak divine king strength. Soon, he might have to face the 5 god emperors. At that time, even if he didn't say anything, the truth would be exposed. Since that was the case, it was better to inform everyone as soon as possible. The so-called everyone was not only the sacred dragon emperor, but also the red dragon emperor, the black dragon emperor, and the Arphiuchus. These 4 peak divine kings were Ji Tianxing's relatives and friends in the dragon realm, and they would also be of help to his future revenge. There was no need to hide it from his family and friends. Ji Tianxing was silent for a moment before he looked up at the emperor. Under his expectant gaze, he said slowly, "Senior sacred dragon, actually you have already guessed it. That's right, 18 years ago, I was indeed in the lower realm. When the god of the underworld's clone descended, I was destroying the Heavenpiercer clan. It is indeed related to you." The emperor's eyes flashed and he said earnestly, "Perhaps this is fate's arrangement." After a long sigh, he asked again, "That's right, since you are already a peak divine king, how could you stay in the lower realm for such a long time? If you are a peak divine king, then you can easily kill the god of the underworld's clone, and Wu Hen would not have been taken away. What exactly happened? Tell me in detail, like how I told you just now. Do you think everyone is as long-winded as you?" Ji Tianxing thought to himself. However, he was not in a hurry to do anything and was not afraid of delaying this. For Wu Hen's sake, he gave the god of the underworld a rough explanation. "Back then, I was a 4th-stage divine king and left the dragon realm to cultivate in the divine world. 1,100 years ago, I was a peak divine king and was known as Kenshin in the divine world. Because of the divine Tao treasure, the 5 peak divine kings used all their strength and led more than 10,000 divine kings and divine lords to besiege me. I led my friends and soldiers in a counterattack and fought with the 5 peak divine kings in the void beyond the heavens. In the end, I died. Fortunately, I knew the secrets of the heavens and disrupted the rules of the heavenly Tao in advance. After I died, a trace of my soul was not destroyed and reincarnated into the mortal realm. 100 years ago, I reincarnated and cultivated again. I grew up step by step in the mortal realm and returned to the divine world 18 years ago. I wanted to return to the divine world to cultivate and recover my peak divine king level before seeking revenge on the 5 divine kings. Unexpectedly, they broke through the shackles and reached the god of the underworld. My identity was exposed in the divine world and I was besieged by the 5 god of the underworld. I had no choice but to return to the dragon realm. Ji Tianxing gave a simple explanation of what had happened. After that, he looked at the sacred dragon emperor calmly. The sacred dragon emperor was shocked and in disbelief. His eyes shone with a complicated light. After a long while, he sighed deeply and said, "Although I had guessed that things were not simple, I did not expect it to be so complicated. You are the only disciple of the heaven-sealing dragon emperor. Back then, I felt that you were extremely talented and would definitely become a peak divine king. I did not expect you to become a peak divine king 1,000 years ago. After that, so many things happened. Sigh. I already feel pressured to have a feud with the god of the underworld. But you are even more valiant and have a death feud with the 5 god of the underworld. In my opinion, even if you are a peak divine king now, you have no chance of revenge. You should go to the outer realm to cultivate and become a god of the underworld as soon as possible." Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. He said, "Thank you for your concern, senior. I have my own plans. I have waited for more than 1,000 years, I am not in a hurry." "That's right, senior. You have been cultivating in the Tian Kuei star domain for hundreds of years. Do you have any signs of breaking through to the god of the underworld? If you can break through to the god of the underworld first, you will definitely restore confidence in the dragon realm and let the other dragon emperors see hope." The sacred dragon emperor pursed his lips and said helplessly, "I am already old. Whether I can break through to the god of the underworld is really up to fate. But you, kid, are terrifyingly talented. I am sure that you will be the first to become a god of the underworld." "Senior, you flatter me." Ji Tianxing only smiled and did not say anything else. He knew his own situation best. He wondered if the sacred dragon emperor would still be so confident if he knew that he was only a 9th-tier divine king and not a peak divine king. At this moment, the sacred dragon emperor said earnestly, "Long Tian, the fact that you reincarnated is somewhat unbelievable. If word gets out, it will shock the world. Also, it will attract the attention of the 5 god of the underworld. This is very dangerous. So, I will help you keep it a secret. You should also be careful." Ji Tianxing's heart warmed slightly. He nodded and said, "Thank you, senior. Oh yes, I have a question that I wanted to ask earlier. You are my senior and Wuhan is your disciple. We should still address each other separately. Otherwise, our seniority will be messed up." Chapter 39:14. Of course, this was just a joke with a hint of mockery. The emperor knew that Ji Tianxing was not using this as an excuse to express his displeasure. He was just reminding him. Therefore, he smiled and nodded. "Don't worry, I have already thought about this problem. I will not make you feel awkward." In fact, Ji Tianxing was not unhappy that Wuhan could become the emperor's disciple. If Wuhan did not become his disciple, he would have taught him personally. Wuhan's life was full of twists and turns. Since she was saved by the emperor, it was not a big deal for her to become his disciple. Anyway, the emperor's experience and ability made him worthy of being Wuhan's master. In this way, the relationship between the sacred dragon emperor and Ji Tianxing could be improved. In the future, if Ji Tianxing wanted to deal with the 5 god emperors, he would have to borrow the power of the emperor, the black dragon emperor, and the others. Now that they had finished discussing the important matters, Ji Tianxing's heart was finally relieved, and he no longer worried about Wuhan. Since the emperor asked him to stay, Ji Tianxing was not in a hurry to leave. He stayed in the secret chamber and continued chatting with the emperor, asking about Wuhan's current situation in the heavenly leader's star domain. At the mention of Wuhan, the emperor's face was full of pride and gratification. As he recounted the events that had happened over 10 years ago, he spoke tirelessly and without stopping. Although Wuhan is still young, she is very mature and steady. She is exactly the same as you were back then. He usually stays in my divine palace and spends most of his time cultivating the divine Tao and comprehending the various remarkable powers that I have taught him. In the past 10 years, the number of times he left the divine palace can be counted on one hand. This old man remembers that the longest time he went into seclusion was a full 7 years. After he finished his seclusion, he broke through from the 7th level of the heavenly God realm to the divine Lord realm. To be honest, he reached the divine Lord realm at the mere age of 20. He is definitely the youngest divine Lord in history. This is also an eye-opener for me. I really don't know how you got such good fortune to have such a demonic son. The emperor looked at Ji Tianxing, his eyes and tone full of admiration. But there was no envy, much less jealousy. After all, Wuhan had already become his last disciple. Ji Tianxing thought about it seriously. He had cultivated in the mortal world for dozens of years. After he ascended to the deity world, he had cultivated for several years before he recovered to the divine Lord realm. Back then, he had become a divine lord in his 80s. He was already the youngest divine lord. But a few years later, his daughter Ji Wushuang also broke through to the divine lord realm, breaking his record. Only now did he know that actually, the one who broke through to the divine lord realm the fastest was still Hatred. Thinking about this, Ji Tianxing was filled with gratification and pride. He thought to himself, after all, he's the child of Yun Yarrow and I. He was born a god. How can ordinary people compare to him? At this point, the sacred dragon emperor spoke again. Besides Wuhan, I have also taken in a female disciple. She is a descendant of a Chilean that I found when I was traveling through outer space. It is very likely that she is the last Chilean bloodline left in this world. Back then, when she was still young, I named her Qi Ling and brought her back to Tian Kuei Starfield. Although she entered the sect earlier than Wuhan and should be his senior sister, she is still a Chilean. Her lifespan is too long and her growth is too slow. Today, Wuhan is already a handsome young man, while Qi Ling is still a little girl. So, I made Wuhan the senior brother and Qi Ling the junior sister. Oh, there is such an interesting story. Ji Tianxing was intrigued and said with emotion, since ancient times, the dragons, phoenixes, and killins have all become sinners and suffered the wrath of the heavens. There are many dragon bloodlines and they can still survive to this day and control the dragon realm. But the phoenixes and killins have very few bloodlines to begin with. Now, they are even more rare. It is also a great opportunity for you to find a Chilean bloodline. It is also good karma for you to take her in as your disciple and guide her carefully. The sacred dragon emperor nodded in agreement and sighed. Since ancient times, the dragon realm has suffered the wrath of the heavens and many races have become sinners. It is difficult for them to reproduce in the dragon realm and they are withering away. They have all moved to outer space. But now that 30,000 years have passed, most of the races have gradually disappeared. The dragon clan and the dozens of sinners in the dragon realm can only continue to search for ways to survive. Otherwise, I am worried that in another few tens of thousands of years, these sinners will all disappear. Ji Tianxing hurriedly comforted him. Senior, don't worry. There will definitely be a solution to let the races continue to survive. The two of them were silent for a while. The sacred dragon emperor hesitated for a moment before asking, Long Tian, 1,000 years ago, the 5 god emperors tried to kill you to steal your treasure. After that, the god of the underworld secretly supported the Heavenpiercer tribe to search for some treasure map in the lower realm. The treasure map he is looking for is the treasure you obtained that year, right? This was one of Ji Tianxing's greatest secrets. He did not want to reveal it. But the sacred dragon emperor was very smart and had already guessed some secrets. He wanted to build a good relationship with the sacred dragon emperor so that they could form an alliance in the future and use him as a helper. He could not lie and hide anymore. The prerequisite for building a good relationship was to treat each other with sincerity and mutual trust. At this thought, Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, "You guessed correctly." The sacred dragon emperor's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope. He lowered his voice and asked, "In that case, the treasure map in your hands can help you to break through to the God Emperor realm?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and said regretfully, "I can't be sure about that. I have not tried it yet." This was the truth. He had not reached the peak of the God King realm. The sacred dragon emperor frowned and thought for a while. He asked again, "Since the treasure map is still in your hands and the 5 God emperors have not obtained it, how did they break through to the God Emperor realm?" Not only did one break through to the God Emperor realm, but all 5 of them became God Emperors. Did they obtain an even more powerful treasure? Since the sacred dragon emperor was already thinking about these questions, Ji Tianxing could not hide anything. Otherwise, he would not be able to explain himself clearly. To avoid any misunderstandings, he took the initiative to explain. "Senior, to be honest, we found 2 sets of treasures that year. The first half was called the Eternal Heavenly Book and was obtained by the 5 God Emperors. I suspect that they used that heavenly book to break through to the God Emperor realm. And the second half of the treasure was an array map. The original item was destroyed long ago. I only memorized all the contents of the array map." In fact, Ji Tianxing's frank and honest explanation of the truth was only 9 truths and 1 lie. The original item of the heaven-destroying array map had not been destroyed. It had always been with him. The so-called Kenshin's tomb was actually formed by the heaven-destroying array map. That year, it was the heaven-destroying array map that protected a wisp of his soul and allowed him to survive in the face of certain death. That was how he was able to reincarnate. But the sacred dragon emperor was already filled with emotion when he heard Ji Tianxing tell the truth. "I see. After hearing what you said, I finally understood the crux of the matter. No wonder there were 5 God Emperors in the divine realm. No wonder the god of the underworld secretly supported the heaven-destroying tribe to search for the treasure map in the lower realm. I'm afraid the god of the underworld also guessed that you did not die and reincarnate to the lower realm." Chapter 39:15. Long Tian, I am very grateful that you are willing to reveal these secrets. At least, I have seen the hope of breaking through to the God Emperor realm and have also understood the truth. Don't worry, not only will I help you keep these secrets, I will also guide Wuhan with all my heart, so that he will surpass his teacher. The sacred dragon emperor was not a fool. Of course, he knew that Ji Tianxing had told him these secrets because he saw him as a trusted friend. He was touched and grateful, and made up his mind. He said solemnly, "The blood feud between you and the 5 God Emperors is almost impossible to resolve. One day, when you break through to the God Emperor realm, you will definitely take revenge on them. Don't worry, I will also do my best to help you. Especially the god of the underworld. I will take his life with my own hands and take revenge." The emperor gritted his teeth at the mention of the god of the underworld. His hatred ran deep. Ji Tianxing guessed that the emperor must have been severely injured after being defeated by the god of the underworld. The heavenly stalwart's domain must have suffered a terrible loss and damage. Otherwise, given the emperor's amiable personality, he would never hate the god of the underworld so much. He got up and bowed to the emperor. He said sincerely, "Thank you for your help, senior. But this matter cannot be rushed. We still need to plan slowly. Don't worry, when I verify that the Heaven Punishment Formation map can help me break through to the God Emperor realm, I will not keep it to myself. At that time, I will help you, the Black Dragon Emperor, and the Red Dragon Emperor all break through to the God Emperor realm. There are 5 God Emperors in the divine world. They are scheming something big, and the Dragon realm cannot fall behind. We must also give birth to a few God Emperors in order to compete with them." Everyone knew that if anyone possessed a divine Tao supreme treasure, they would definitely conceal it. They would never share it with anyone other than their closest relatives. But Ji Tianxing had promised the emperor that if the Heaven Punishment Formation map could help people break through to the God Emperor realm, he would definitely share it. What kind of courage and magnanimity was this? The sacred dragon emperor also stood up and bowed to Ji Tianxing. He said in a solemn tone, "Long Tian, I am extremely impressed by your magnanimity and can't thank you enough. If this matter succeeds, you will be the savior of the dragon realm." I also promise you that whether that formation map can help us break through to the God Emperor realm or not, I will always be your support and support." After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands and bowed in the direction of the extraterritorial void. With a gratified expression, he lamented, "Senior Sky Dragon, do you see this? This is your last disciple. Your choice back then was not wrong, and your prophecy is about to come true. You are right, only Long Tien can save the Dragon Realm. He has already grown up and has the same breadth of mind and boldness as you. He can take on great responsibilities." The sacred Dragon Emperor's tone was rather agitated and he was in an extremely good mood. What exactly is going on? Ever since he returned to the Dragon Realm and learned that his master had gone missing, he had felt that it was very strange. His master was the most powerful person in the Dragon Realm and the most respected senior. How could he have died for no reason? There must be some secret behind this. It was just that he had not found out. Now, after hearing the Emperor's strange words, he was even more certain that there was a problem. His master must have said something to the Emperor before he went missing. Unexpectedly, the Emperor was taken aback and did not answer Ji Tianxing. He was distracted for a moment before he smiled and said, "Don't be anxious. The Black Dragon Emperor is here. Let him tell you." With that, he took out a mysterious transparent crystal and placed it on the jade table in front of him. This crystal was a special magical weapon. It seemed to have the effect of transmitting sound and projection. As the Emperor cast his spell and injected his divine power into the crystal, it immediately lit up with a dazzling white light and formed a light screen in midair. Ji Tianxing stared at the light screen. After the light screen calmed down, an image appeared. In the image, there was a study in a palace. In the spacious and elegant study, the Emperor's original body sat on the main seat. Behind him was a tall bookcase. In front of him sat a middle-aged man in a black robe. He was so handsome that he looked devilishly unruly. He did not look like a dragon emperor at all. Ji Tianxing recognized him immediately. The man in the black robe was the Black Dragon Emperor. This image is the heavenly lead star domain. The Black Dragon Emperor has already met the Emperor, Ji Tianxing suddenly realized. Before he could speak, the Black Dragon Emperor in the image waved at him and greeted him with a smile. "Little brother, you didn't expect me to reach the heavenly lead star domain so quickly, right? I wanted to give you a surprise, but you still went to the sacred dragon continent and found the Emperor's clone. Since you already know your son's whereabouts, I have completed my task. I know you are very excited and want to thank me in person. But there is no use in thanking me verbally. You don't have to give me those empty words. Just treat me to a few more drinks in the future." The Black Dragon Emperor sat on a spacious jade chair. As he chewed on dried fruits and drank divine tea, he chatted with Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing did not know whether to laugh or cry. He frowned and asked, "Old Black Dragon, you already have a harem of 3,000 beauties. Why are you still thinking about drinking wine?" The Black Dragon Emperor flicked his fringe that covered half his face and rolled his eyes at him. He said disdainfully, "What do you know? Aren't the dragons a sinful race with withered bloodlines? I am worried about the future of the dragon race. I am willing to devote my energy to reproduce and create more descendants for the dragon race. How can you use such an expression on such a sacred and solemn mission? To save the dragon race, I am duty-bound. You have to agree and support me. Respect, respect." Ji Tianxing rolled his eyes and cupped his hands to show that he had lost. The Emperor smiled and stroked his white beard as he watched them bicker. "That's enough. Both of you stop talking nonsense. Since everyone is here, let's talk about what happened in the past. Just now, Long Tien has already told me all the secrets he knows. Let's also tell him what happened in the past. Now, he has the right to know." The Black Dragon Emperor's smile faded when they started talking about serious matters. He said seriously, "Long Tien, you and Arphiuchus don't have to continue searching for the Heavenly Dragon Emperor. Don't be too sad. He is not missing. He has really died. No one forced him, and no one attacked him. This was his own choice. He is the wise man of the Dragon Realm, everyone's elder. He is also the greatest Dragon Emperor of the Dragon Realm. Long before you appeared, He had been investigating the ancient mysteries to find the truth behind the gradual decline of the dragon realm. He never married or accepted any disciples in his entire life. However, he was able to deduce the heavenly secrets and predict the future. So when you appeared in the dragon realm, the first person you saw was him. Do you think that was a coincidence? No, he has been waiting for you. Chapter 39:16. He's been waiting for me. Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows, feeling a little complicated. Actually, when he was reminiscing about the past, he had the same guess. Back then, when he ascended to the dragon realm, he appeared in the Star Source continent and was stranded in a mountain range. The first person he saw when he opened his eyes was his master, Dragon Emperor Fengtian. And Dragon Emperor Fengtian's cave abode was in the distant Sky Dragon continent. Back then, he also wondered if Dragon Emperor Fengtian was waiting for him. Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental? But Dragon Emperor Fengtian did not admit it. He said that he was on a business trip to the Star Source continent and coincidentally met him. Since his master said so, he did not think too much about it and did not dwell on it. Now that the Black Dragon Emperor brought it up again, he knew the exact answer. That's right. The Sacred Dragon Emperor stroked his beard and explained with a smile, "Your master deduced that the dragon realm had been punished by the heavens and that dozens of races had become sinners. This is the will of the heavenly Tao and cannot be reversed and saved. At least, the billions of demons in the dragon realm cannot do it. But there is one person who can save the dragon realm and get rid of the heaven's punishment." Ji Tianxing was stunned. "That person is me." "That's right." The Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor nodded at the same time and smiled at each other. "Your master thinks that person is you. So, he waited for you to appear in the dragon realm and brought you back to the Sky Dragon Divine Palace to take you in as a disciple. At that time, we did not understand. Your master never took in disciples, so why would he make an exception for you? But when you were still in the dragon realm, your master did not explain. We also observed you for many years and felt that your talent was outstanding. It was probably because of your master's love for talent. Until later, when you left the dragon realm and went to the divine world. After another 200 years, your master seemed to have seen something when he divined the heavenly secrets for the last time. He found the two of us and talked to us a lot. At that time, he told us that the dragon realm had been punished by the heavens and the sinners. We've always been ignorant, but he's seen through everything and found a way to solve it. He told us that you were the key to saving the dragon realm. Although he was highly respected and the greatest sage, we did not believe him. But we didn't believe it at the time. We thought it was ridiculous. Even we, these peak divine kings, can't save the dragon race. How can you, a little disciple, possibly save the dragon race? What's more, you've already left the dragon realm for many years and never appeared. But your master insisted on this and left the dragon realm after discussing many secrets with us. At that time, he was determined to sacrifice himself and told the Ophidian that he was going to atone for his sins. Even though we don't know why or how he sacrificed himself. But he sacrificed himself for the dragon realm, which made us both shocked and grateful. In fact, after your master's sacrifice, there weren't many changes in the dragon realm, and you never appeared, so we gradually lost hope. Until a few years ago, when you returned to the dragon realm and caused such a huge commotion in the Star Source continent. From then on, we started to pay attention to you and have expectations for you. Until today, when you revealed those secrets, we finally believed that your master was right. To break the dragon realm's heavenly wrath, we can only place our hopes on you. The Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor took turns to say these words, which gave Ji Tianxing a clearer understanding of the Heavenly Dragon Emperor's death. Seeing the two Dragon Emperors' burning eyes filled with hope and anticipation, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Don't look at me like that. Although my master firmly believes that I can save the dragon realm, I still have no clue how to do so. How can I save the dragon realm?" The Black Dragon Emperor hurriedly waved his hand and said firmly, "Little brother, don't belittle yourself. Your master won't joke around with his life. He has a lifespan of 100,000 years, but he only lived for 30,000 years before sacrificing his life. If you weren't the savior of the dragon realm, why would he sacrifice himself? Wouldn't it be better to live freely for another 70,000 years? The sacred dragon emperor also smiled and nodded. Long Tian, we all believe that you can do it. We have no hope of breaking through to the God Emperor realm, but you have a high chance. When you break through to the God Emperor realm, you can interfere and use the power of heavenly Tao. By then, you will definitely be able to find a way to save the dragon realm. I hope so. Ji Tianqing thought for a while and could only nod to show that he would work hard. He had feelings for the dragon realm and was even more grateful and respectful to the heavenly dragon emperor. Therefore, he didn't want to disappoint his master and let his master's sacrifice be in vain. He wanted to fulfill his master's last wish and save the fate of the dragon realm. Seeing that Ji Tianqing had accepted the difficult task of saving the dragon realm, the sacred dragon emperor and the black dragon emperor both smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. Ji Tianqing thought for a while and asked, "Besides these, what else did my master say before he died? For example, did he find any clues about the ancient mystery and the heavenly wrath dragon realm? Also, where did he go after leaving the dragon realm? And where did he sacrifice himself?" The sacred dragon emperor nodded. "Your master spent half his life researching the ancient mystery and the heavenly wrath dragon realm. Of course, he had some results and gains. He told us that the ancient era ended because of a great war between the gods. That was the largest and most magnificent battle since ancient times, and it directly ended an era. He speculated that in that great war, countless strong people and living creatures were destroyed. Even the world's structure changed because of it." The Black Dragon Emperor added, "Your master also said that the dragon realm was punished by the heavens and dozens of races became sinners. It was all related to that great war between the gods." Ji Tianqing narrowed his eyes and immediately thought of a key point. 30,000 years ago, the great war between the gods ended and the ancient era ended. A new era began. The mother of the human race, goddess Yarrow Guang, seemed to have fallen in that great war while fighting against the demons. And the five elements world, like the dragon realm and the heavenly realm, was originally an eternal world in the upper realm. It seemed that because of that great war between the gods, the five elements world fell into the mortal world and became an unknown lower realm. In that case, the dragon realm was also involved in that great war. If Master's guess is right, that great war between the gods is the key. As long as we find out the truth of that great war, we can solve all the mysteries and find out how to save the dragon realm. These thoughts flashed across Ji Tianqing's mind, and his train of thought became clearer. Seeing that the Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor did not speak, he asked again, "Regarding that great war between the gods, I have some key clues after being reborn in the lower realm. However, you still haven't told me where Master fell. Or rather, did he leave any clues or revelations after he fell?" The Black Dragon Emperor sighed. The Sacred Dragon Emperor said earnestly, "Your master left the dragon realm alone and none of us followed him. Naturally, we don't know where he fell. But he was sure that he'd definitely perished in the starry sky. Perhaps he left some clues or revelations, but you need to find them yourself." Chapter 39:17. In that case, after I leave the Holy Dragon continent, I will go to the outer realm to explore. Neither the Sacred Dragon Emperor nor the Black Dragon Emperor had a definite answer about the sacrifice of the heaven-sealing Dragon Emperor. Ji Tianqing could only go to the outer realm personally and spend time searching for clues. Only then would he be able to find out the truth. The Black Dragon Emperor asked again, "Long Tian, you said that you have returned from the lower realm and no key clues about the great battle of the gods. Can you tell us more?" The Sacred Dragon Emperor was also interested and nodded in agreement. Only by understanding the great battle of the gods can we think of ways to solve the crisis of the dragon realm. Ji Tianqing did not hide anything and asked directly, "You also know that there are 3,000 greater realms and billions of lesser realms in the lower realm. Although there are 9 galaxies in the upper realm, there are only 2 eternal realms, the dragon realm and the divine world. Don't you feel that something is missing?" The Sacred Dragon Emperor and the Black Dragon Emperor looked at each other and frowned, deep in thought. "That's right. Long Tian's words have enlightened me. Something is indeed wrong. I have considered this problem before. Only the dragon realm and the divine world are eternal primary realms. This does not seem to conform to the rules of the heavenly Tao. Especially when the divine world produced 5 god emperors and the dragon realm was punished by the heavens. One is extremely strong and the other is extremely weak. This does not conform to the rules of the heavenly Tao. The 2 dragon emperors seemed to have woken up from a dream as a bold guess appeared in their minds. Long Tian, do you mean that there was another primary world in the upper realm? And the disappearance of that primary world is related to the great battle of the gods? Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. Both of you are indeed the dragon emperors. You understand immediately. It seems that you have also suspected this before. That's right. In ancient times, there were indeed 3 primary worlds that existed eternally. According to the rules of the heavenly Tao, the most stable state was the tripartite balance. Therefore, the coexistence of 3 primary worlds was in accordance with the will of the heavenly Tao. However, the great battle of the gods at the end of ancient times destroyed the 3rd primary world. Hearing his confident tone, the sacred dragon emperor and the black dragon emperor were shocked and in disbelief. Are you sure? Brother, are you sure you are not making this up? If this is true, then this is too shocking. Ji Tianxing's expression became serious, and he said solemnly, I guarantee with my life that this is absolutely true. After the destruction of the 3rd primary world, it became extremely dilapidated and weak. It drifted down to the lower realms, stopping at the edge of the billions of worlds, becoming an unknown small world. And it was precisely because I was reborn into that world and cultivated again that I returned to the dragon realm. The Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor no longer had any doubts. They accepted this fact in shock. The 2 of them were agitated and quickly asked Ji Tianxing, what's that world called? Is that world still in the lower realm? Does it still have a chance to return to the upper realm and become the 3rd main world? Ji Tianxing patiently explained, that world is called the 5 Elements world, but I don't know what it was called as the main world in the ancient times. Now, it is no longer in the lower realm. I brought it back to the upper realm. Hearing this, the Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor were even more shocked and stunned. The 2 of them looked at each other and remained silent for a long time before they regained their senses. Long Tian, when you ascended to the divine world, you brought the 5 Elements world back to the upper realm? Are you out of your mind? You brought the entire world with you? Are you talking nonsense or did I hear wrongly? The heavenly Tao has its own rules and restrictions. You can't even bring one more living thing with you when you ascend. How can you bring the entire world with you? This is too preposterous. It's simply unheard of. Obviously, the 2 dragon emperors could not accept this and could not believe it. Ji Tianxing had already expected this. He smiled and said, if I brought a star from the lower realm with me, I would definitely not be able to ascend. But the 5 Elements world originally belonged to the upper realm and was once one of the main worlds. So, I did not bring it with me when I ascended. I only brought it home. The Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor were stunned for a moment. They also felt that Ji Tianxing's words made sense and the shock and absurdity in their hearts lessened greatly. But the 2 of them were still shocked by this incident. Their understanding of the world was greatly impacted and they would not be able to regain their senses in the short term. No matter what, this matter is too preposterous. Long Tian, if this happened to someone else, I would definitely not believe it. But you are an anomaly, so I can accept this shock. After all, you are the chosen successor of the Heavenly Dragon Emperor and also the hope of saving the Dragon Realm. No matter what happened to you, it is not surprising. Seeing the Sacred Dragon Emperor's complicated expression but firm belief in his heart, Ji Tianxing felt a little emotional. Fate was really amazing. Who would have thought that before he entered the Yuanjua Grotto Heaven, he and the Sacred Dragon Emperor were only acquaintances and did not have a deep relationship. But in just one day, the Sacred Dragon Emperor had become his son's master and had even become a firm ally with him. More importantly, the Sacred Dragon Emperor and the Black Dragon Emperor both saw him as the savior of the Dragon Realm. Such a huge change in status and such a miraculous encounter in life. If it were any other divine king, they might not be able to hold it in. They would need at least a few months to calm down. But Ji Tianxing was different. He was calmer from start to finish. Even though his emotions fluctuated when he heard the two dragon emperors talk about the past, he was not agitated. It was as if he had a premonition long ago, which was why he could be so calm. Thinking about it carefully, although what happened today was miraculous, it did not happen suddenly. It was fated more than 1,000 years ago. All of this was just a matter of when the conditions were right. After a moment of silence, the three of them chatted for a while. Ji Tianxing asked the sacred dragon emperor if he could let him see the current Wuhan. He also wanted to know what Wuhan looked like now. The sacred dragon emperor looked awkward and explained awkwardly, "Long Tian, I am so sorry. Half a year ago, after Wuhan broke through to the Divine Lord realm, he wanted to go out and train. So I agreed to let him go to planet Tsungyue. But don't worry, although there is danger on planet Tsungyue, I have sent a few divine kings to protect him secretly. With his intelligence, I'm sure he'll be fine." Seeing Ji Tianxing frown slightly with a regretful expression, the sacred dragon emperor took out another light ball and injected his dharmic powers into it. Instantly, a light projection appeared on the light ball and many images appeared. Most of the scenes in the images were near a divine palace. And the one who appeared the most in the images was a handsome young man who was about 15 or 16 years old. He was 7 feet tall. That young man was dressed in a black robe and looked extraordinarily valiant. His aura was cold and sharp, like a sharp sword. Most of the time, he was meditating to cultivate his sword Dao, or standing at the edge of a cliff or on top of a cloud, quietly comprehending his sword Dao. The person who appeared by his side the most was a little girl who looked like she was carved out of jade. Chapter 39:18. Even without the emperor's introduction, Ji Tianxing already knew who he was. The cold-looking young man in a black robe, who looked very similar to him in his youth, was Wuhan. And the cute little girl who appeared the most frequently beside Wuhan was his junior sister, Qi Ling-er. Ji Tianxing watched the scenes on the screen while using the image recording crystal to record the scenes. It was not enough for him to watch it. He still had to show it to Yun Yaro, Ji Ku, Wu Shuang, and the rest. After a while, the scenes in the crystal ball ended. The emperor kept the crystal ball and said to Ji Tianxing, "Long Tian, don't worry. I will take good care of Wuhan and wait for you to find him. You are his father. It is your freedom to take him away whenever you want. But I also know that you have a heavy responsibility and a blood feud on your shoulders. There are still many things you need to do. If you are worried that Wuhan will be affected by his cultivation and growth, then let him stay by my side." Ji Tianxing nodded and said sincerely, "Thank you, elder, for your kindness. When the time is right, I will take Wuhan away. But before that, I have a message that I hope you can pass on to him." The emperor nodded hurriedly. "Say it. I will pass it on to him without leaving out a single word. Wuhan, father, mother, and your sister, we all miss you very much. Ever since we ascended to the divine realm, we have been working hard to become stronger and find you. Now that I know you are by Senior Shenglong's side, I can finally rest assured. You don't have to worry about us. I have already recovered to the peak of the Divine King level. But I still have many things to do and may not take you away for the time being. You must believe in your master. Senior Shenglong is a trustworthy person. You don't have to be wary of him. Also, you have already reached the Divine Lord realm. You should have reached the end of the sword Dao techniques and remarkable powers that I passed on to you. Since you mainly focus on swordsmanship and supplement it with the Dragon Clan's remarkable powers, you are walking the same path as me. Now, I'll teach you the second half of the sword Dao cultivation technique and divine ability. Remember it well and practice it diligently. After that, Ji Tianxing told the sacred dragon emperor about his swordsmanship and remarkable powers in a super long-distance video call. The sacred dragon emperor then passed it on to Ji Wuhan. Logically speaking, every expert's cultivation method and divine ability would not be easily known to outsiders. The Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor were both present. With their memory, they could remember everything after listening to it once. But Ji Tianxing did not mind. He believed in the Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor's character. Moreover, the two Dragon Emperors were already peak divine kings, who knew how many divine powers and ultimate skills they had mastered. At their level, other than God Emperor level treasures and techniques, there was almost nothing else that could pique their interest. Even if Ji Tianxing asked them to cultivate his sword Dao sacred art, they might not be interested. After Ji Tianxing taught them the cultivation method and remarkable powers, the sacred dragon emperor said seriously, "Long Tian, leave this matter to me. When Wu Han returns, I will teach him." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly, indicating that there was no problem. He then looked at the Black Dragon Emperor and asked, "Old Black Dragon, thank you for helping me so much. You spent so many years running around. I will remember this favor. Now that Wu Han has been found, do you want to rush back to the Dragon Realm or catch up with Senior Sacred Dragon?" The Black Dragon Emperor waved his hand and smiled. "I'm already tired of playing in the Dragon Realm. It's boring. Next, I plan to be a guest in the Heavenly Stalwart Star region and experience the beauty of the other races. Cough cough, I mean the local customs. If there is nothing else to do in the Dragon Realm, I don't plan to return for the time being. Besides the Heavenly Stalwart Star region, I am also very interested in the other star regions." Looking at the Black Dragon Emperor's smiling face, Ji Tianxing could guess what he wanted to do. He wanted to travel to the various star regions and find more women from other races to strengthen his dragon palace and contribute to the prosperity of the dragon race. But it was not appropriate for him to expose such things. After all, he was a senior. "All right, then I hope you have fun outside and have many dragon children." Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and smiled mockingly at the Black Dragon Emperor. "Phut!" The Black Dragon Emperor spat out the tea he had just drank. He scolded angrily, "Little rascal, how dare you tease me? Ha ha ha." Ji Tianxing laughed heartily. At this time, the Sacred Dragon Emperor did not give the Black Dragon Emperor a chance to fly into a rage. He hurriedly ended this super long-distance video call. The light screen in mid-air dissipated. The secret chamber fell into silence and returned to darkness. Ji Tianxing looked at the Sacred Dragon Emperor's clone opposite him, stood up, bowed, and took his leave. The Sacred Dragon Emperor's clone stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. He asked, "Although I guess that you still have things to do, I still want to ask you to stay. It has been 1,000 years. Do you not intend to stay in the Yuanjua Grotto Heaven for a few days before leaving?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and said solemnly, "Although I have not met the 5 God Emperors and have not exchanged blows with them. But Long Yang told me a secret. I feel that the situation is getting more urgent and I must act quickly." The Sacred Dragon Emperor nodded slightly and smiled. In the Dragon Realm, other than the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor who was more reclusive, I, the Black Dragon Emperor, and the Red Dragon Emperor all followed your master's lead. And now in the Dragon Realm, only the Northern Underworld cannot bear such a huge responsibility. I, the Black Dragon Emperor, the Red Dragon Emperor, and the Arphiuchus will follow your lead and help you save the Dragon Realm and take revenge. Here are some communication jade slips. Keep them and keep in touch in the future. Thank you, Senior. Ji Tianxing thanked him again and kept the dozens of jade slips. The Sacred Dragon Emperor stroked his beard with his left hand and waved his right hand. Go. Ji Tianxing did not stay any longer. He turned and left the secret room and walked out of the Heavenly Palace. Outside the Heavenly Palace, there was already a guard commander waiting. Seeing Ji Tianxing come out, the guard commander led the way for him and respectfully sent him out of the Yuanjua Grotto Heaven. Half an hour later, Ji Tianxing left the Yuanjua Grotto Heaven and stood under the blue sky and white clouds. He looked around and felt emotional. Ever since he defeated the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and took over the Xuanji Grotto Heaven, he had left the Star Source continent. In these 2 years, he first went to the Heavenly Dragon continent, then to the Red Dragon continent, and now to the Sacred Dragon continent. Besides the Black Dragon continent, he had visited all 5 continents in the Dragon Realm. Fortunately, all his hard work had not been in vain. He had finally found Wu Han's whereabouts. The huge rock in his heart had been lifted. He could now carry out his revenge plan with peace of mind and do more important things. Actually, he already had a plan in mind. As long as there were no problems in the Dragon Realm, he would leave the Dragon Realm and enter the extraterritorial galaxy to increase his strength and investigate the mystery of his master's death. Of course, he also had to find time to return to the divine world. Many years ago, when he escaped from the boundless heaven continent and the reincarnation island, he could not let go of those people and forces who had pursued him. In addition, he had left some forces in the divine world in his previous life. He was prepared to go back and see if he could still gather his old subordinates and expand his forces. Chapter 39:19. After leaving the Yuanjua Grotto heaven, Ji Tianxing flew into the distance. As he flew at a leisurely pace, he sent a message to Arphiuchus and Long Yang. Both of them were his most trusted friends and knew that he was searching for Wuhan. Now that Wuhan had been found, he naturally had to inform them so that Arphiuchus and Long Yang would not be worried. Besides that, he also wanted to ask Arphiuchus about the situation in the 10,000 Demon Alliance and whether the situation in the Star Source continent had stabilized. As for Long Yang, he also had to reveal some secrets to Long Yang. He had already confessed to the Emperor about his reincarnation and his deep feud with the 5 God Emperors. The Black Dragon Emperor would definitely know these secrets when he saw the Emperor himself. In that case, as his most trusted brother, Long Yang should know as well. Only then could everyone trust each other and form an alliance. Besides that, he also asked Long Yang about the current situation in the Crimson Dragon continent and his injuries. After Ji Tianxing sent the message, he stayed in the White Sea of Clouds and waited for Arphiuchus and Long Yang's reply. In less than 15 minutes, a communication jade slip flew over from the horizon. The first to reply was naturally Arphiuchus' alliance leader Luo Hu. Ji Tianxing's divine perception entered the message and Arphiuchus's voice sounded in his mind. He sounded happy and excited. "Congratulations, young master. Congratulations, young master. After so many years of searching, young lord has finally found little young master. Little young master is also blessed by the heavens. He was actually saved by the Emperor and even became his last disciple. This is definitely fate's arrangement. Young lord, don't worry. Currently, the 10,000 Demon Alliance is the dominant force and intimidates the entire Star Source continent. No one dares to go against us directly. I have been managing the Alliance's affairs and steadily expanding and strengthening our power, gradually subduing the various regions. Young Lord's previous strategy has been very effective. Threats and promises have been used one after another to gradually control the entire continent. As of now, our alliance has controlled nearly half of the territories. Although the remaining half of the territories have the intention to resist, no one dares to actually do so. This old servant boldly predicts that in at most 20 years, they will be able to control the entire continent." Hermit congratulated Ji Tianxing first before he reported the situation of the 10,000 Demon Alliance and the Star Source continent. Seeing that the situation was going well and everything was going according to plan, Ji Tianxing was relieved. In truth, with Alliance Master Luo Hu personally overseeing the Star Source continent, he wasn't worried at all. After waiting for another hour, the second communication jade slip flew over from the horizon and landed in front of Ji Tianxing. This was the message sent by Long Yang. Ji Tianxing could only imagine how shocked and surprised he must have been when he learned so many secrets. It took him such a long time to reply to the message. Most likely, Long Yang also took a long time to calm down. As his divine sense entered the jade slip, Long Yang's excited and trembling voice immediately sounded out in Ji Tianxing's mind. "Long Tian, my brother, you've been hiding it from me for a long time. I can't believe that so many things happened after you left the Dragon Realm, and after you died, you were actually able to be reborn. This is simply too amazing. Although I only know a portion of the secrets that Uncle Tianlong, the Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor told me. But the fact that you can tell me all these secrets proves that you treat me as your best brother. Don't worry, your brother will also support you. I will help you save the Dragon Realm and avenge you even if I have to risk my life. You don't have to worry about the situation in the Crimson Dragon continent. The Golden Crow tribe and the Lu Wu tribe are all well behaved and won't cause any more trouble. My injuries are also no longer a problem. I'll be able to recover after recuperating for another 10 years. Long Yang's character had always been like this. He was kind, honest, and loyal. He wasn't too shrewd or scheming. Ji Tianxing had been worried that Long Yang would have some thoughts and resentment. But Long Yang was so agitated and his words were so firm and intense that it warmed his heart and made him feel rather touched. With the support of these dragon emperors, whether it was saving the dragon realm or avenging the 5 god emperors, he wouldn't fight alone. Ji Tianxing kept the jade slip and looked at the yellow sunset. He sighed. In my previous life, I was too cold and aloof. I did things my own way. Although I had the ability to reach the heavens, in the end, I was besieged and died. And in this life, I won't fight alone. I will gather more experts and fight alongside everyone. Although he didn't fight alone in the great battle in his previous life, there were at least a few thousand Sir Gods and more than 30 King of Gods who were willing to risk their lives with him. But those were all his subordinates. Only a few of them were his friends. Moreover, among his friends, none of them were peak King of Gods. It was different in this life. He had already befriended 4 peak King of Gods who were willing to fight alongside him. He could even mobilize 70% of the Dragon Realm's power with the help of these Dragon Emperors. This was his power, the alliance he had formed. However, Ji Tianxing wasn't complacent, much less complacent. When he thought of the 5 God Emperors' strength, methods, and schemes, he felt that the current alliance wasn't strong enough. He still had to work harder to increase his strength and let this alliance absorb more experts. His strength had to be even stronger. Go to the starry sky. After a moment of silence, Ji Tianxing made a decision. He raised his palms and urged his mighty divine power, striking out a sword light that cut through the sky. Crack! With a crisp cracking sound, a gap was torn open in the blue sky, revealing a pitch-black void. Ji Tianxing didn't hesitate. He stepped through the spatial crack and entered the void. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianxing appeared in the dark and cold void. Behind him was the Dragon Realm. In front of him was the vast and boundless starry sky with billions of stars shining brightly. Ji Tianxing took out the Burial of Heaven sword and let the Burial of Heaven fly into the depths of the void. He entered the sword world and took out the Jotian 10 Absolutes Pagoda, preparing to distort space and time to tell Yun Yarrow and the others the good news. The Burial of Heaven sword flew in the void, and the Burial of Heaven's voice also sounded in Ji Tianxing's mind. Where are we going? Without a target, it couldn't act on its own and run around, right? Ji Tianxing replied telepathically, I might have to travel for many years to enter the starry sky this time. It could be a few decades or a few centuries. My goal is to travel to all the major starfields. First, to find opportunities. Second, to investigate the mystery of Master's death. Third, to increase my strength. Since I'm going to travel to all the major starfields, I'll start with the nearest Scorpio starfield. If there's any opportunity or something, just wake me up. Understood, the Burial of Heaven replied calmly. Thus, both sides stopped talking. The Burial of Heaven sword flew toward the Scorpio starfield at a moderate speed. Ji Tianxing also returned to the distorted spacetime and woke up Yun Yarrow, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, Bai Long, Qian Yu, Black Dragon, and the others who were still cultivating under the sacred tree. Chapter 3920. In the distorted spacetime, under the blood flame sacred tree. Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged on a short jade table in front of him. Yun Yarrow, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, Bai Long, and the rest were all awakened by his divine perception voice transmission. At this moment, everyone surrounded him and looked at him expectantly. Even Qian Yu and the Black Dragon had finished their cultivation and gathered around him excitedly. Tianxing, you said you have good news for everyone. What is it? Now we have nearly 10 divine kings. Even if the others have not broken through to the divine king realm, they are still middle-level and upper-level divine lords. Brother Tianxing, are you planning to go back to the divine world to take revenge? If that's the case, then it's really good news. At least we can finally be of use. Everyone was talking at once. They all wanted to know what had happened. Ji Tianxing did not keep them in suspense. He smiled and said, ever since I left the Xingyuan continent, I have been looking for Wuhan. In these few years, I have searched the Heavenly Dragon continent, the Crimson Dragon continent, and the Sacred Dragon continent. Although I did not go to the Black Dragon continent, I asked the Black Dragon Emperor to help me find out. Just yesterday, I entered the Yuanjua Grotto Heaven and found the sacred Dragon Emperor's clone. It turns out that my initial judgment was right. Wuhan was indeed rescued by a powerful Dragon Clan warrior. And that peak divine king was the sacred Dragon Emperor. When Ji Tianxing mentioned Wuhan, Yun Yaro, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, and the rest were all stunned. Then, they were pleasantly surprised. They could all guess that the surprise Ji Tianxing mentioned must have something to do with Wuhan. As expected. After hearing this, everyone was filled with excitement and cheered in surprise. Tianxing, have you really found Wuhan? That's great. Our family can finally be reunited. After more than 10 years, father has finally found brother. This is really a great surprise. I already said that Wuhan will be blessed by the heavens. Nothing will happen to him. Master, since you have met the emperor and found junior brother Wuhan, where is he now? That's right, old Ji. Don't keep us in suspense. Let Wuhan come out and meet everyone. We all miss him very much. Everyone was overjoyed and excited, and they couldn't wait to see Ji Wuhan. Yun Yaro, in particular, was both excited and nervous. She looked at Ji Tianxing with an urgent gaze. However, Ji Tianxing's answer was destined to disappoint everyone. Everyone, don't be so excited. I have indeed found Wuhan. However, the sacred Dragon Emperor had been in outer space for the past few hundred years and had only left a clone to guard the sacred dragon continent. I saw his clone and learned about this news, but I didn't see Wuhan. That year, after the sacred Dragon Emperor had rescued Wuhan, he had brought him to the heavenly leader's star domain and had never returned to the dragon realm. Seeing Wuhan's exceptional talent, the emperor cherished him and took him in as his last disciple. Now, Wuhan is cultivating and training in the heavenly leader's star domain. We will only be able to see him in a few years. After hearing his explanation, everyone was stunned for a moment. The joy and excitement in their hearts faded by more than half. Although everyone was a little disappointed that they couldn't see Wuhan immediately. Overall, this was still good news. Ji Ku saw that Yun Yaro's expression was a little gloomy and hurriedly comforted her. Eldest senior sister, although we can't see Wuhan for the time being. However, it is also very good to know his whereabouts and confirm that he is safe now. The sacred Dragon Emperor is one of the 5 overlords of the dragon realm. He is one of the best among the peak divine kings. With him teaching Wuhan, I am sure Wuhan's skills will improve by leaps and bounds. Ji Wushuang and the White Dragon also spoke up to comfort Yun Yao. Mother, as long as we know where brother is and confirm that he is fine, it will be fine. We will only be able to see him a few years later. That's right, mistress. We have waited for more than 10 years. A few more years won't make a difference. Yun Yao nodded and smiled at everyone. She said with some emotion, "Don't worry, everyone. I am more than happy to be able to find Wuhan's whereabouts. Although we can't see him for the time being, I am also not in a hurry to wait a few more years. If he can cultivate peacefully in the heavenly leader's star domain, we will be able to see him sooner or later." Seeing that Yun Yao had let go of her worries, everyone heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. At this moment, Yun Yao continued, "I just don't know if Wuhan has grown up after more than 10 years. What has he become? He must have suffered a lot while cultivating in the extraterrestrial galaxy." Even though she knew that Wuhan had already become the sacred Dragon Emperor's last disciple. But as a mother, she would still worry about her son and worry for him. Ji Ku and Ji Wushuang were also very concerned about Yun Yao's question. They looked expectantly at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing directly took out an image recording crystal and placed it on the short table in front of him. After I saw the sacred Dragon Emperor's clone and found out about Wuhan's whereabouts, I also asked him the same question. Although the sacred Dragon Emperor's original body and clone were separated by a few star domains, he had 2 special divine artifacts. However, he had 2 special divine artifacts. When they were activated at the same time, they could project and communicate from afar. At that time, Wuhan was cultivating in the heavenly leader's star domain and was not by his side. So the sacred Dragon Emperor used a crystal to show me Wuhan's growth over the years. I wanted to show it to all of you, so I used this image recording crystal to record it. After explaining, Ji Tianxing injected his dharmic powers into the image recording crystal. Instantly, the image recording crystal lit up with white light and formed a blinding white screen in mid-air. All kinds of images appeared on the screen, but the background was mostly a heavenly palace. Everyone stared intently at the screen. They looked at the heavenly palace in the images, as well as the handsome and cold youth in the black robe. For a full 7 minutes, hundreds of images flashed past. Everyone could clearly see that the black-robed youth in the images had grown from the initial 12 to 13 years old appearance to a 16 or 17-year-old appearance. Everyone was excited to see the black-robed youth cultivating, meditating, and comprehending the divine Tao. Smiles appeared on their faces. It's indeed Wuhan. He looks exactly the same as Tianxing when he was young. It looks like Wuhan did not suffer much by the sacred dragon emperor's side all these years. Of course, Wuhan is extremely talented and the sacred dragon emperor thinks highly of him. He will definitely not let him suffer. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 years have passed. Junior brother Wuhan's appearance has not changed much. He looks only about 3 years older. This is very normal. After all, old Ji and Yun Yarrow have special bloodlines. Wuhan and Wushuang are both favored by the heavens and were born extraordinary. Not only does Wuhan look like a youth, but Wushuang also looks like a 12 or 13-year-old little girl. I just saw that Wuhan seems to have broken through to the Divine Lord realm. Everyone stared at the images on the screen and discussed fervently. However, Ji Wushuang was more observant and noticed a detail. She asked Ji Tianxing curiously, "Father, who is that girl who often appears beside brother?" Chapter 39:21. Hearing Ji Wushuang's question, everyone also noticed this problem. Thus, everyone's gaze fell on Ji Tianxing. "Tianxing, who is that cute and nimble girl in the blue dress? She has appeared many times. She seems to be very close to Wuhan. Master, could that little girl be the emperor's daughter?" Seeing everyone's confusion, Ji Tianxing explained, "Don't make wild guesses. Like my master, the emperor has never married or had any children in his life. He has never taken in a disciple. When my master saw me, he made an exception and took me in as his disciple. Because my master predicted that only I can resolve the crisis in the dragon realm and save the dragon realm. And that little girl is a little Chiline that the emperor met by chance when he was traveling in outer space. This involved the secret of the ancient war. The dragons, phoenixes, killins, and dozens of demons became sinners. The dragon realm was also punished by the heavens. Now, there are no phoenixes or killins left in this world. The emperor felt that the little girl could be the last Chiline bloodline. So he brought her back to the sacred palace and took her in as his disciple. He named her Qi Ling'e. Qi Ling'e was the emperor's first disciple. Later on, the emperor saved Wuhan and took her in as his last disciple. Originally, Qi Ling'e should have been Wuhan's senior sister. But killins are ancient mythical beasts and grow very slowly. Even though she is a few hundred years old, she still looks a few years younger than Wuhan. Therefore, the emperor made Qi Ling'e his junior sister and Wuhan her senior brother. According to the emperor, they have a very good relationship. At the end, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but smile. Yun Yarrow, Ji Ku, Bai Long, and the rest couldn't help but smile. Only Ji Wushuang was a little confused and still worried about her brother. She muttered, from the image, that Qi Ling'e seems to be more nimble and elegant. But I don't know what her nature is like. I hope she is not a troublemaker who always causes trouble for her brother. Everyone could tell that Wushuang didn't like or welcome Qi Ling'e, who stuck to her brother all day. But this was human nature, and everyone expressed their understanding. Yun Yarrow held Wushuang's hand and said gently, "Don't worry about your brother. The sacred dragon emperor is a peak divine king and controls the entire Tian Kuei star domain. In Tian Kuei star area, no one can cause trouble for your brother. He won't be bullied." At this time, Bai Long and Qian Yu both looked at Ji Tianxing and asked expectantly, "Master, you just said that the dragon realm is in danger and we have to save the dragon realm. What is this all about?" "That's right, old Ji. What ancient war, heavenly wrath, and sinners? Why don't you tell us more about it? Up until now, Many God King powerhouses in the Dragon Realm had heard about the heavenly wrath and the sinners. However, only Ji Tianxing, the Sacred Dragon Emperor, the Black Dragon Emperor, the Red Dragon Emperor, and the Arphiuchus knew the details. He did not intend to hide it from everyone. After all, the people in front of him were the closest to him. Therefore, he spent another 4 hours explaining the matter to everyone in detail. He explained that Dragon Emperor Feng Tian had sacrificed himself and that the god of the underworld was secretly supporting the Heaven Punishers. 4 hours later, Ji Tianxing told everyone all the secrets he knew. Everyone was enlightened. It was as if a new world had been opened up and they understood many things. Yun Yarrow frowned and thought for a while before coming to a conclusion. She understood Ji Tianxing the best and naturally guessed Ji Tianxing's plan. In that case, the 5 God Emperors are not in the divine world. They are all in the depths of the void, surrounding that foggy star and carrying out some unspeakable things. They are desperately oppressing the divine world and enslaving all the major star areas so that they can obtain more cultivation resources to study that foggy star. What we need to do is not only to take revenge on the 5 God Emperors, but also to save the Dragon Realm, which is suffering from heavenly wrath. With our current strength, we are still not strong enough to face the 5 God Emperors. Therefore, Tianxing, you need to travel the void and investigate the mystery of Dragon Emperor Feng Tian's death and find a way to increase your strength. When we are strong enough, we will return to the divine world to gather our former subordinates and further expand our forces. In the end, we will save the Dragon Realm and with the help of the other Dragon Emperors, we will work together to kill our way into the depths of the void and take revenge on the 5 God Emperors. And the greatest opportunity and secret is very likely to be that foggy star. Everyone listened attentively to Yun Yarrow's analysis. Seeing that she was clear and organized, they all nodded to express their agreement. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. That's right, you know me the best. What you just said is my plan of action. However, this is only a preliminary plan. No one knows if there will be any changes. Therefore, we can only take one step at a time and see what happens. Ji Ke's eyes were a little dim. He sighed. If the 5 God Emperors had not broken through to the God King realm and were still peak God Kings, with our current strength, we would have been able to take revenge on them. At first, I thought that since we have all become God Kings, we would be able to help you. But I didn't expect that we would still not be able to help. Bai Long, Chen Yu, and the others felt the same. After all, Ji Tianxing's strongest enemies were the 5 God Emperors. Even the weakest of them were peak God Kings. As for the few of them, they had either not broken through to the God King realm or had just broken through. With their strength and methods, helping Ji Tianxing to take revenge was simply suicide. Seeing that everyone was a little down and their expressions were a little serious, Ji Tianxing smiled and comforted them. I am not worried. What are you worried about? The 5 God Emperors are strong, but we are not fighting alone. We have many allies. Most importantly, we do not need to rush for revenge. The most important thing now is to continue increasing our strength. Yun Yarrow, Ji Ke, and the others nodded in agreement. Tianxing, you can travel the void in peace and look for clues and opportunities. We will continue to cultivate in seclusion and increase our strength. When you enter the heavenly stalwart star field and see Wuhan, you can wake us up. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, I have said so much today to let everyone know who our enemies are and what we are going to do, so that everyone can be mentally prepared. Don't worry, before the time is right, I will not take the initiative to meet the 5 God Emperors. After all, I have caused such a big commotion in the divine world, they must have heard the news and know that I have returned. Now, we have to be more careful. Ji Ke suddenly thought of something and showed a worried look. He reminded, Tianxing Gige, since the 5 God Emperors know about your existence and they have control over several star fields, you must be careful when you travel the void. Don't fall into their ambush. Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood, indicating that everyone did not need to worry. After a long time, everyone dispersed and continued to cultivate in seclusion with pressure and motivation. Chapter 39-22. The area under the bloody flame sacred tree regained its peace. Everyone had gone into seclusion to cultivate. Ji Tianxing was no exception. After this period of consolidation, He had stabilized his 9th-tier divine king powers. He was prepared to continue cultivating the 5th level of the heaven punishment technique and strive to return to his peak divine king powers as soon as possible. However, when he had told the emperor about the secrets, he had mentioned the heaven punishment array. Before he started cultivating, his consciousness had entered the Kenshin's tomb in his body to check on the sword array hidden by the fog. Now that he had returned to his peak, his powers were comparable to before, and his memories had been completely restored. He naturally knew that the so-called Kenshin's tomb was actually the heaven punishment array. It was a supreme treasure that was above the divine king realm and contained the supreme great Tao. In his previous life, when he had died, he had relied on the heaven punishment array to preserve a wisp of his soul and reincarnate. And now, the heaven punishment array was his greatest secret and also his most powerful trump card. After obtaining the heaven punishment array in my previous life, I had only scratched the surface of it when I was besieged by the 5 god emperors. In this life, I must thoroughly study the heaven punishment array. After all, this treasure is my only hope of breaking through to the god emperor realm. With this thought, Ji Tianxing's consciousness entered the Kenshin's tomb and flew across the desolate wilderness to the edge of the fog area. Many years ago, he had cleared 80% of the fog area. The ground within a radius of 80,000 miles was covered with array patterns, showing the great Tao of heaven's secrets. It was a pity that he had not been powerful enough to break through all the fog. Therefore, his understanding of this sword array was not clear enough and there were still some flaws. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Ji Tianxing stood in the middle of the sword array and faced the grey fog in front of him. He waved his hand and sent out sword light that blotted out the sky. Sword light flashed in the sky and golden light burst forth. Hundreds of sword light slashed into the fog, creating a series of muffled sounds. The last 20% of the fog started to dissipate bit by bit, and more array patterns appeared on the ground. Ji Tianxing had used a lot of energy to cast the array for an hour. In the end, the remaining 20% of the fog only managed to disperse a radius of a few thousand miles. After all, that 20% area was 20,000 kilometers in radius. The entire sword formation had a radius of 100,000 miles. Ji Tianxing stopped and quietly adjusted his breathing. He couldn't help but sigh. The deepest 20% of the fog is actually so difficult to clear. Even with my current strength, I can only break through 85% of the fog. As for the remaining 15% of the array patterns, I'm afraid I'll have to wait until I recover to peak Divine King before I can see it. Although it was a little regretful, he was not in a hurry. The newly revealed incomplete formation had already given him new insights into the heaven-punishing divine art. Shua. His consciousness left Kenshin's tomb and returned to his body. Ji Tianxing began to perfect the 5th level of the heaven-punishing divine art, further increasing his strength. The sword of burial of heaven continued to roam in the void as if it would never tire. A short month later, he entered the Scorpio star zone. The last time Ji Tianxing came here, it was to help Long Yang deal with the Golden Crow tribe leader. At that time, Ji Tianxing entered the Scorpio star zone and only moved around the Thousand Tree star for a while before quickly leaving. This time, he would travel the entire Scorpio star zone in search of clues and opportunities. The 3-foot-long sword of burial of heaven was as black as ink, as if it had become one with the void. After entering the Scorpio star zone, it flew as fast as lightning, and no one could detect it. Even a peak divine king would not be able to detect it as long as it was more than 100,000 miles away. In the next 10 days, it flew past several stars toward the depths of the star zone. Not only was it in charge of traveling, but it also had to investigate the situation in the star zone and help Ji Tianxing find opportunities. When it flew past those few stars, it had roughly investigated them. Seeing that there was no intelligent life on those planets, and that they were barren and desolate, with nothing of value, it ignored them. Until the 6th day. When it approached a huge brown star, it suddenly sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianxing. Swoosh. After a while, Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation and appeared in the void. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand and looked at the brown star nearby. He asked with his divine thought, "Burial of heaven, did you find anything interesting?" 36 days had passed in the outside world, and he had been cultivating in the distorted spacetime for almost 5 years. His strength had improved, and his divine path foundation had become more stable. This was natural. However, his strength had not improved by much, so there was nothing to talk about in detail. The voice of Burial of Heaven came into his mind and explained, "This star is uninhabited and does not seem to have any intelligent life, but it contains a lot of metal and divine stone veins." Ji Tianxing stared at the brown star. After a while, he nodded and said, "You're right. This star does contain a lot of metal veins. A star with a diameter of more than 50 million miles. If there were a lot of metal veins, it would be a huge fortune." However, Ji Tianxing was not tempted. He muttered to himself, "Even if Yank and the Earth Spirit race can help me mine the metal veins and extract a lot of cultivation resources, I still have 1 billion miles of cultivation resources. However, I already have hundreds of trillions of cultivation resources. At the very least, I won't be lacking for a few thousand years. What I lack the most now is a king-grade divine artifact or a treasure above the divine king grade. Unless I don't mine the resources of this star and directly refine it to strengthen the 5-elemental world." Thinking of this, his eyes lit up. He had found another way to quickly improve his strength. The Burial of Heaven said, "After ascending for so many years, you finally remembered this. The 5-elemental world is too weak. If you want to restore it to a primary world, you must refine a lot of stars. You have also merged with the 5-elemental world. If you can make the 5-elemental world grow quickly, your strength will also increase quickly." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Thank you for your reminder. This method can not only strengthen the 5-elemental world, but also increase my strength. It is indeed faster than cultivating in seclusion." After making up his mind, he descended on the brown star. He spent a few days to find the main vein of the star, the place with the most abundant resources. Then, he took out the heaven-mending orb. Borrowing the supreme divine power of the heaven-mending orb, he used the engulfing divine ability and began to refine the brown star. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The heaven-mending orb released countless strands of white light that probed into the surface of the brown star and extended into the underground veins. At the same time, Ji Tianxing's palms shot out 2 white light vortexes that gradually sank into the earth and devoured the metal and ores. As time passed, the earth and mountains quickly melted and disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. The metal and ores in the brown star were all refined into various kinds of divine power and poured into the 5-elemental world. At the same time, Ji Tianxing also absorbed a huge amount of divine power to enrich his divine path. Inside the heaven-mending orb, the 5-elemental world that had been growing healthily once again welcomed a frenzied tide of growth. The entire 5-elemental world was enveloped by overflowing divine power. The mountains, rivers, and all living things were growing at a crazy rate. Even the continents were quietly growing bigger. The volume of the 5-elemental world was also slowly increasing. Chapter 39-23. After so many years of development, the 5 elements world had already expanded twice as much as before. Not only had the area of the sea expanded, but the continents had also become more vast. At the same time, the human race, demon race, and various other races were multiplying at an accelerated rate. The number of living beings between heaven and earth was also increasing exponentially, and many races that had never been seen before were born. Of course, living beings like the human race and demon race who knew the Tao of cultivation were rapidly increasing their strength. Not only were there many geniuses and powerhouses in every race, but there were also many true gods. In the past, the 5 elements world had an invisible curse. It was impossible for true gods to appear, and it was even more impossible for gods to ascend. However, after Ji Tianxing brought the 5 elements world to the upper realm, the so-called curse disappeared. Because, without the restrictions of the heavenly Tao, the 5 elements world could finally grow wildly. Not only did a few true gods appear, but there was even a heavenly god. When Ji Tianxing discovered this, he was very gratified and excited. Moreover, over the years, he would often put in large amounts of cultivation resources to nurture the 5 elements world. All living beings in the 5 elements world had long been used to the frequent spiritual energy storms, as well as the treasures and resources that fell from the sky and could be seen everywhere. The human race in the entire world called this change the spiritual energy recovery. They all believed that the five elements world had ushered in the most brilliant cultivation era. An entire month passed. This brown star was finally devoured by Ji Tianqing and the heaven-mending pearl. Needless to say, all kinds of metals and mineral veins were naturally devoured by him and the heaven-mending pearl. Even the soil and sand contained in the star were devoured by the heaven-mending pearl, turning into pure earth-type spiritual energy that was injected into the five elements world. In short, the star with a diameter of more than 50 million miles disappeared. The five elements world received a huge amount of spiritual energy replenishment, and for a long time, it would grow wildly. Ji Tianqing also received great benefits, and his strength steadily increased. After the refinement, he put away the heaven-mending pearl and continued to fly on the burial of heaven. Just like before, the burial of heaven rushed on with the sword. He comprehended the Tao in the distorted spacetime and comprehended the heaven-punishing divine technique. In the dark and cold void, the scene did not change, as if there was no time flow. In the human world, even if it was only 1,000 years, there would still be great changes. But in the void, nothing changed even after tens of millions of years. Such a short amount of time was simply too short compared to the seemingly eternal void. Therefore, the gods of the various worlds could only feel the insignificance and inferiority of life when they walked in the void. Many peak divine kings all had the great limit of 100,000 years of lifespan. In the god realm and the dragon realm, this was also an existence that was envied and revered. But compared to the starry sky that had existed for who knows how many billions of years, peak divine kings were also ants. It was exactly because of this that Ji Tianqing was the same as all the other god kings. When he roamed the cosmos, he would gain many insights. Soon, another 2 months had passed. The burial of heaven passed by more than a dozen stars and found a waste star that contained a large amount of resources. Even though this faint silver star only had a diameter of 30 million miles, it was still very bright. There was no water, air, plants, or life on the planet. However, the surface of the star was covered with a metallic luster, and it contained countless mineral layers. With his experience in burial of heaven, he could smell all kinds of gems and metals. Swoosh! Thus, the burial of heaven sword descended on that star, and it awakened Ji Tianqing again. After Ji Tianqing appeared, he stared at the silver star for a long time before nodding in satisfaction. Although this star is much smaller than the previous one, it contains several times more metal materials and mineral veins. Even though the value of the entire star was not as precious as a supreme-grade king-level divine artifact. But after careful calculation, the resources that could be mined from this star were worth at least 20 trillion. Ji Tianqing did not waste any time. He found the most majestic mountain range on the surface of the star and began to devour this star. The heaven-mending pearl released billions of white lights that extended into the star. Ji Tianqing also used his devouring divine ability. With 2 vortexes that were thousands of miles in radius, he crazily devoured the resources in the star. As time passed, this star gradually shrank. All kinds of useful substances turned into pure divine power and replenished Ji Tianqing's body and the five-element world. At the same time, near this silver star, in the void thousands of miles away from Ji Tianqing's body trembled. A dark golden divine ship was streaking across the void at lightning speed, flying toward the depths of the star field. Inside the divine ship, there were thousands of foreign race divine beings. Among them, there were 1,000 divine beings, all of whom were divine lords. The 5 leading divine spirits were all divine king realm experts. The strongest god king was a 7th stage high god king. He was of a different race with a long, snake-shaped head and multicolored body. As for the other 5 god kings, they were all middle god kings of the 5th and 6th stage. Their appearances were all different and they were all very strange. While the divine ship was hurrying, the thousands of divine beings were conserving their energy. The 5 divine kings were gathered together to discuss important military matters. In another half a day, we will arrive at planet Qiming. Everyone, cheer up. We will occupy planet Qiming in 10 days. General, We have dominated the Scorpio starfield for so many years and have never failed. This time, we will definitely win. Don't worry. That's right. Planet Chi-Ming is just an ordinary star under Blue Scorpion Divine King. It is said that its master is only at the 7th stage. General, you will definitely win easily. 10 days later, we will take Planet Chi-Ming and report the good news to the evil Soul Domain Lord. General, you will definitely be rewarded. Now that we are attacking everywhere, the Blue Scorpion Divine King is already in a mess. He will not be able to withstand a single blow. General, don't worry. Obviously, the divine beings on this divine ship were all under the evil Soul Domain Lord. The evil Soul Domain Lord was one of the 2 overlords of the Scorpio starfield. He was even stronger than the Blue Scorpion Divine King. The generals under his command were certain that he would defeat the Blue Scorpion Divine King and become the Scorpio starfield's master. Therefore, they all called him the Domain Lord. The Domain Lords of the God Realm and the Dragon Realm referred to the lords of the various territories. The Domain Lords of the Outer Realms were the overlords of the 9 major starfields. They were obviously more powerful. Therefore, the Domain Lords of the major starfields were either 9th stage Divine Kings or Peak Divine Kings. The foreign race experts on this divine ship were ordered by the evil Soul Domain Lord to attack Planet Chi-Ming, which was under the Blue Scorpion Divine King. Everyone knew that the hundreds of stars in the Scorpio starfield all had their own star lords. As for those star lords, they were only temporarily under the command of the 2 overlords. Their loyalty was questionable. As long as they could break through Planet Chi-Ming's defenses and defeat Star-Lord Chi-Ming, Star-Lord Chi-Ming would definitely surrender. In order to save his life, Star-Lord Chi-Ming would immediately change his tune and submit to the evil Soul Domain Lord. After all, Star Lords were fence-sitters. They could recognize anyone as their boss as long as they could keep their lives and their position as Star Lord. Chapter 39-24. 2 hours had passed. The divine ship carrying the god-level non-humankind beings flew for over 9 million miles in the void. The distance between the divine ship and Ji Tianxing had also shrunk to a few 100,000 miles. The mid-level God Kings were still bragging about the Great General and God King Evil Soul's glorious achievements. Suddenly, the Great General discovered that on the surface of a nearby star, there were 2 dazzling white halos and a dazzling white net of light. Look, what's that? The Great General frowned and stared gravely at the star's surface. The few God Kings stopped bragging and turned their heads to look. Seeing the scene on the star's surface, everyone was stunned for a moment before they started discussing in low voices. What's going on? It seems like someone is casting a spell on that useless star. What spell? Is someone setting up a great array there? That net of white light is the network of a great array. It's at least tens of thousands of miles wide. Heavens, such a huge array. Are they trying to build a teleportation array? You mean to say that the experts under God King Blue Scorpion want to use the teleportation array to send people to ambush us and catch us off guard? After a few words of discussion, the God Kings were filled with vigilance and murderous intent. The Great General decisively ordered, attacking Chi-Ming Planet is important, but the situation here is highly likely to be God King Blue Scorpion's scheme. We must investigate this thoroughly. If we can foil God King Blue Scorpion's scheme, it will be a great merit. Let's go and see what's going on. Thus, the divine ship immediately changed direction and flew toward the 2 halos and the huge net of light. Ji Tianxing was focused on casting a spell and happily devouring the star. He originally thought that this useless star was unremarkable and that no one would notice him. But he didn't expect that after 2 hours of casting a spell and tasting the sweetness, an uninvited guest would arrive. Swoosh! A dark golden divine ship that was 3,000 meters long descended from the sky and landed above his head, shining with dazzling divine light. Immediately after, the cabin door of the divine ship opened. A foreign god with the head of a snake and wearing a leather vest flew out with a spear in his hand. Behind him were 4 grotesquely shaped, ugly gods of other races. They were also carrying all kinds of weapons, looking murderous. Ji Tianxing could tell with a single glance that these 5 alien god kings were natives of the Scorpio galaxy. They clearly had ill intentions. However, he wasn't worried at all. He simply withdrew his palms and put away the 2 white light vortexes. As for his heaven-mending orb, it was still floating in the air, releasing billions of rays of white light as it devoured the power of the stars. Those 5 foreign race god-kings were also people who knew what was good for them. After shooting a glance at Ji Tianxing, their gazes landed on the heaven-mending pearl. Immediately, the eyes of the 5 god-kings lit up as surprise and greed flashed through their eyes. From the looks of it, this guy isn't setting up a formation. Instead, he seems to be devouring the power of this useless star. Look at that orb, its power is so pure and powerful. Heavens, that pearl's aura is several times stronger than a high king-level deity artifact. Could it be a supreme-grade deity artifact? Ha ha ha. Brothers, we've hit the jackpot. We actually found such a treasure here. A supreme-grade deity artifact. It's rare to find one in the entire Scorpio galaxy. To think that we actually found one today. Could this be a fortuitous encounter? The 5 alien god kings exchanged glances and discussed secretly with each other through voice transmission. They were all very excited and agitated. Previously, they had only been vigilant and on guard, checking the situation to see if anyone was plotting something. However, that was no longer important at this moment. Just that powerful and mysterious orb was enough to make them cast aside their rationality and become crazed and greedy. Of course, they still went through the formalities on the surface. The general pointed his spear at Ji Tianxing from above and bellowed, "Bastard of a foreign race, are you a subordinate of the Blue Scorpio God King? How dare you secretly set up a deity array here and try to harm us? You're finished. Just surrender." There was no air in the void, so it was very difficult for sound to travel out. Therefore, everyone communicated with their divine senses. As a result, there was no language barrier. Ji Tianxing glanced at the general and sneered. "A subordinate of the Blue Scorpio God King? Where did you guys come from? From your tone, you should be an enemy of the Blue Scorpio God King." The general did not care about what he said at all. As if he was singing a one-man show, he shouted angrily, "Good, you really are the Blue Scorpio God King's lackey. Despicable bastard, since you're so treacherous, don't blame me for being merciless. Generals, listen up, take down this foreign race." Following his order, the 4 middle-level god kings who had been rubbing their palms for a long time immediately waved their sabers and Kenshin soldiers, attacking Ji Tianxing from all sides. The general did not stay idle either. His figure flashed across the void and headed straight for the heaven-mending orb. His goal was very clear. The 4 god kings would delay Ji Tianxing while he snatched the heaven-mending orb. There was nothing wrong with this plan, and it happened so suddenly. If it was an ordinary high-level god king, they would be at a disadvantage immediately, and the heaven-mending orb might be snatched away. However, the 5 foreign race god kings did not know how terrifyingly strong this foreign race youth they were facing was. Just like an uncivilized wild beast, too barbaric and lowly, Ji Tianxing curled his lips in deep boredom. He raised both his hands and shot out dozens of sword lights, chopping towards the 5 foreign race god kings. Only peng 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 sounds could be heard, and rays of dazzling divine light lit up. The 4 middle-level god kings were all struck by the sword lights. Their bodies spurted out blood of various colors, and a pile of arms and legs fell off. The general who tried to snatch the heaven-mending orb was also sent flying 100 miles away by the 2 sword lights. The long spear in his hand was sent flying, and the right arm he stretched out to snatch the heaven-mending orb was also chopped off by the sword lights. In a split second, the 5 god kings were all injured. They were dripping with blood, and they let out painful screams. Ji Tianxing still did not take back the heaven-mending orb. He said to the 5 injured foreign race god kings, "This king has nothing to do with the Blue Scorpio God King, and even more so with your forces. This is a lesson for your greed. Disappear from this king's sight immediately, otherwise, this king does not mind killing all of you." After saying this, Ji Tianxing did not look at them again. He continued to urge the heaven-mending orb to devour this star. He originally thought that this lesson would be deep enough to make the 5 foreign race god kings retreat. However, he underestimated the attraction of the heaven-mending orb and the greed of the foreign race god kings. These 5 foreign race god kings had roamed the Scorpio star zone for thousands of years. They had never tasted defeat or humiliation, and they were used to being cruel and domineering. Even though they were injured by Ji Tianxing in one move, they knew that Ji Tianxing was very strong, but they did not give up. Damned bastard, you have successfully angered this king. You are dead meat. In the Scorpio star zone, no one has ever dared to humiliate this king like this. The general picked up the long spear and right arm, cursing with grief and indignation. Then, he opened the cabin door of the divine ship and summoned nearly 1,000 monarch god experts. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 39-25. Swoosh. Swoosh. Nearly 1,000 Sir God experts had been recuperating in the divine battleship, waiting to attack Qiming planet. After flying out of the divine battleship, they saw an unfamiliar planet in front of them. But they were well trained. After being stunned for a moment, they quickly formed a battle formation under the command of the general. The battle formation was 1,000 miles wide and in the shape of a hexagram. It surrounded Ji Tianxing. Every Sir God of a foreign race held a divine weapon and stared at Ji Tianxing with murderous intent. Divine power surged all over their bodies. The 5 injured godly kings stood in the sky above the battle formation. After circulating their powers to suppress their injuries, they led the Sir God experts to attack. In their minds, no matter how strong Ji Tianxing was, he was destined to be killed by them. After all, they had 5 godly kings and nearly 1,000 Sir God experts. It was enough to conquer a planet. How could they not kill a godly king of a foreign race? Kill. Kill this bastard of a foreign race. Tear him into pieces. Shouts of killing erupted from the crowd. The 5 godly kings attacked from different directions at the same time. Nearly 1,000 Sir Gods joined forces to cast spells and released divine powers that could destroy heaven and earth. They exploded with wild and unparalleled power. Everything within 1,000 miles was drowned by the radiance of swords and divine powers. However, Ji Tianxing didn't even use the sword of burial of heaven to deal with these foreign race experts. He only used his fists and legs to launch a few divine powers and ultimate skills to launch a counterattack. Bam! 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 Thousands of radiances of swords and divine powers of various shapes bombarded him, but it was like scratching an itch. He was enveloped in a layer of faint golden light that blocked all the attacks. These godly kings and Sir Gods of foreign races couldn't break his defense at all. But the dragon elephant divine fist that he used and the sword radiances that filled the sky shattered the bodies of the 5 godly kings, turning them into pieces that filled the sky. Hundreds of sword flashes that carried the divine power of 200 laws were scattered in the crowd, killing the divine lords of the foreign races. With a series of dull thuds, at least 700 Sir Gods were instantly killed and turned into dust. The dazzling divine light flickered for a long time before gradually disappearing. At this moment, there were still more than 200 Sir Gods alive. They were all injured to varying degrees. The 5 foreign race godkings had their divine bodies destroyed. It was a tragic sight. The godheads of the 4 middle-level divine kings were also shattered, and they died on the spot. The great general's godhead was still there, and he was lucky enough to keep his life. He was filled with fear, anxiety, and regret. Damn it! How could this guy be so powerful? I was careless. Ji Tianxing's strength had far exceeded his expectations. He now understood that he and these Sir Gods were not enough for Ji Tianxing to slaughter. Today, he had bumped into a tough nut to crack. He was definitely going to die here. However, he was unwilling to resign himself to fate. He refused to sit and wait for death. As he roared, he ordered the 200 or so divine lords to continue attacking Ji Tianxing. At the same time, he desperately fled back to the divine ship, wanting to escape from this planet. Of course, he did not forget to send out a transmission jade slip to seek help from the evil Soul God King. He knew that the evil Soul God King was still deep in the star domain and would need at least a month to reach here. It was impossible for him to save him. However, he thought that even if he died on this planet, he had to at least let the evil Soul God King know what was going on. Only then could the evil Soul God King help him take revenge. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianxing waved his palm and sent out a sky full of sword flashes, killing the 200 or so Sir Gods who were lucky enough to survive. At this moment, The great general had already fled back to the divine ship. He immediately steered the divine ship into the void. Unfortunately, no matter how fast the divine ship fled, it was not as fast as Ji Tianxing. Heaven capturing dragon claw. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and sent out a golden dragon claw with a radius of 50 kilometers, grabbing the divine ship. He flipped his right hand, and the huge dragon claw grabbed the divine ship and slammed it onto the planet. Boom! There was an earth-shattering sound. Everything within 100,000 miles shook violently and countless cracks appeared on the ground. After the dust settled, one could see that the dark golden divine ship had been smashed into a pile of scrap metal. It was twisted like a fried dough twist. Swish! The great general's divine spark was still intact. In fear and desperation, he crawled out of the scrap metal and rushed into the void. However, Ji Tianxing's golden dragon claw grabbed his godhead from a distance and crushed it in an instant. Crack, crack. The oval-shaped divine spark shattered into a dozen pieces. The great general died on the spot. He didn't even have time to beg for mercy. The ruined planet gradually became quiet again. Ji Tianxing put away the divine spark fragments of the 5 divine kings and continued to cast spells to devour the planet. He was too lazy to clean up the battlefield and he didn't want to clean up the scattered spoils. These divine kings and sir gods of the alien races were too weak. They probably didn't have any precious treasures. Then, Ji Tianxing could devour the planet in peace. No one would disturb him anymore. Deep in the Sky Scorpion planet zone, there was a giant planet with a diameter of 100 million miles. It was covered by a bright golden light. It was called the Distant Star. This was a star with a very high grade and very few in number. As one of the overlords of the Sky Scorpion planet zone, Divine King Evil Soul lived on this planet and treated it as his base. The distant star was huge and had a vast area. It was comparable to a continent in the Dragon Realm. There were billions of alien races and hundreds of billions of other creatures living on this planet. At the same time, deep in the blue ocean, in a magnificent palace on top of the sea of clouds, Divine King Evil Soul was in the meeting hall. He stared at a 10-foot-wide sand table and thought about something. The so-called sand table wasn't a model made of sand. It was a divine artifact made by an alien race. It was like a map of the entire Sky Scorpion planet zone. There were a few hundred bright stars in it. They flashed with different colors, which represented worlds with intelligent life. There were also a few 100,000 white spots, which represented dead planets. Of the few hundred planets with life, 60% were blue and 40% were red. The blue planets represented Divine King Blue Scorpion's territory. The red planets were naturally Divine King Evil Soul's territory. The famous Divine King Evil Soul was covered in a layer of black fog. His tall and burly figure was hidden in a wide black robe and cloak. Apart from a scaly tail under the black robe and a pair of scarlet eyes under the cloak, no one could see his true appearance. The meeting hall was very quiet and the atmosphere was solemn. But in reality, apart from Divine King Evil Soul, there were also a dozen Divine King Generals and a few Sir God Messengers. Previously, I received news that Blue Scorpion and the Golden Crow Tribe's leader had a falling out and no longer had the Golden Crow Tribe support. Everyone didn't believe it. But now, I've been waging war for 3 months. I've taken over a dozen of his planets, and he's been forced to retreat. Do you have any other questions? Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3926. Hearing God King Evil Soul's words, the dozen God King generals all looked ashamed. Then, everyone flattered and praised God King Evil Soul, praising him for his godlike foresight, strategizing, and so on. God King Evil Soul enjoyed this very much. He said confidently and in high spirits, although we also have peak God Kings behind us, God King Eternal Wind has always been busy. He rarely shows himself or helps us. And Blue Scorpion God King has the help of the Golden Crow clan, so we never had the chance to get rid of him. Now, he and the Golden Crow clan have a grudge and are in a cold war. This is the best chance for us to counterattack. This time, this king will do his best to attack all of Blue Scorpion God King's territories and then completely eliminate him. Everyone must pay attention to this and cooperate fully. When we successfully control the Scorpion star zone, this king will reward you according to your contributions. If anyone is passive and lazy, then don't blame this king for being merciless. The dozen God King generals were shocked and hurriedly bowed and said yes. At this moment, a spiritual light flew in from the sky and flew into the hall, landing in front of God King Evil Soul. The spiritual light dissipated and revealed a communication jade slip. God King Evil Soul glanced at the jade slip and a smile appeared in his scarlet eyes. He said in a dignified tone, "It's a message from Great General Shu Yi. It seems he has arrived at planet Chi Ming. With Great General Shu Yi's strength and methods, he will be able to capture planet Chi Ming in 10 days at most. At that time, we will use planet Chi Ming as a vanguard and speed up the pace of our attack." As he spoke, he sent his divine sense into the jade slip and read the message inside. When he heard Great General Shu Yi's terrified and despairing voice, he was stunned on the spot and stopped halfway through his words. The dozen God Kings were listening attentively, but they saw God King Evil Soul's voice suddenly stop. The smile in his scarlet eyes disappeared and turned into thick anger. Instantly, the atmosphere in the hall froze again. Everyone had a bad feeling. As expected, God King Evil Soul's pitch-black claws under his sleeves crushed the communication jade slip. He shouted in a low and angry voice, "Damn it! Blue Scorpion God King still had a trick up his sleeve." The generals did not understand what was going on. Someone hurriedly asked, "My lord, what happened?" God King Evil Soul said in a deep voice, "Great General Shu Yi led the troops to the Harmony Star. When they were half a day away from the Harmony Star, they encountered a God King of a different race. That person is probably Blue Scorpion Deity King's accomplice. He wants to use the teleportation divine formation to ambush us." Great General Shu Yi and his soldiers took action to capture that foreign God King. However, that person was extremely powerful and had a mysterious pearl protecting him. He killed more than 1,000 divine lords. Now, the fate of Great General Shu Yi is unknown. Upon hearing this news, the dozen or so generals were all shocked and began to discuss among themselves. Great General Shu Yi is a high-level divine king. Not only did he bring 4 middle-level divine kings, he also brought over 1,000 divine lord experts. With so many people, they actually can't deal with a single foreign god king. That godly king of the alien race is in the 8th layer of the king god realm. No, the 9th layer of the king god realm. Blue Scorpion Deity King doesn't have any 9th stage deity kings under his command. In that case, that person is the new helper that Blue Scorpion Deity King found. Sir Region Lord, we must eliminate that foreign god king. We must not let his scheme succeed. If we let him build a teleportation divine formation on that abandoned star, Blue Scorpion Deity King's army can invade our territory at any time and attack us. The generals realized the severity of the matter and were all furious. They requested God King Evil Soul to send people to eliminate the foreign God King. God King Evil Soul naturally had the same plan. His scarlet eyes swept across everyone. After deliberating for a moment, he opened his mouth and said, "That foreign God King is a disaster and must be eliminated. However, we cannot be restrained by him. The frontal attack and battle must continue and we must increase the intensity of it. This king has decided that God King Xiong Cheng will lead the team. Cheng Yu, Hao Song, and Wu Qi, these 3 God Kings will work together and lead 300 elite divine lord experts to kill the foreign God King." The 4 God Kings who were named by God King Evil Soul immediately stood in the middle of the hall and bowed in unison to receive the order. Although there were only 4 of them, they were only leading 300 divine lord experts to deal with Ji Tianxing. From the sound of it, this force was not as good as Great General Shu Yi's subordinates. But in reality, the 4 God Kings who were named were all high-level God Kings. The leader God King Xiong Cheng was at the 8th level of the God King realm. He was the leader of the few great generals whom God King Evil Soul relied on the most. The other 3 high-level God Kings who worked together were about the same as Great General Shu Yi. They were also at the 7th stage realm. God King Evil Soul exhorted earnestly, "That foreign God King's background is unknown and his power is very strong. You must be careful and not be careless. Xiong Cheng and the other 3 god kings nodded to express their understanding. They said in unison, "Sir Regent Lord, please rest assured. We will definitely kill that foreign god king and completely eradicate this disaster." God King Evil Soul nodded his head in satisfaction and waved his wide sleeves. "There's no time to lose. Set off immediately." The 4 god kings bowed and took their leave. Very quickly, they left the main hall. After gathering the manpower, they steered the god ship and set off. God King Evil Soul temporarily put this matter aside and arranged the other 10 over-generals to lead the army to attack Blue Scorpion God King's territory. Not too long later, many of the generals and heralds left. The main hall regained its silence. Only God King Evil Soul was left standing in front of the sand table. He muttered to himself and sighed, "God King Chang Feng's whereabouts are mysterious. He has not shown his face for several decades. I don't know what important figure he is working for." Every time this king indirectly inquired, he was extremely vigilant and guarded the secret tightly. This time, if not for this king's decision to launch an attack and take the opportunity to get rid of Blue Scorpion God King, I'm afraid he would still not show his face. In another 1 or 2 months, he should appear. By then, this king must try to find out who the expert behind him is. Humph humph. When this king becomes the Star Region Lord, I will directly rely on the expert behind him. It's not a problem to be on equal footing with him. Why should I care about his mood? The low muttering voice was as hoarse as the wind. The scarlet eyes under the black robe flickered with the flames of ambition. Very clearly, this God King Evil Soul also had his own ambitions and schemes. He had long seen through that foreign race's God King Chang Feng. Although he was a peak God King, he was also running errands for an expert. Even though he respected God King Chang Feng on the surface, God King Chang Feng could not bring him too many benefits. At the very least, it was impossible for God King Chang Feng to help him become a peak God King. Therefore, God King Evil Soul was absolutely not satisfied with the position of Star Region Lord. He was well aware that even if he became the Star Region Lord, he would merely be God King Chang Feng's puppet and lackey. If he could climb up to that mysterious expert behind the scenes and be on equal footing with God King Chang Feng, only then would he have the chance to become a peak God King. At that time, he could truly be free and unfettered, doing whatever he wanted. Chapter 39-27. God King Evil Soul stood in the hall for a while before returning to his study to deal with administrative matters. In the last few months, he had been doing his best to attack God King Blue Scorpion's territory, so he had to personally oversee the situation. Every day that he was delayed meant that all sorts of matters would pile up, waiting for him to deal with and decide. Originally, he could have left the matters of the various planets to his subordinates and strategists. He could even have let the Star Lords make their own decisions. However, he was suspicious by nature and was unwilling to trust his strategists, much less give power to the various Star Lords. He had been in the Scorpion Star Zone for more than 10,000 years, so he was most familiar with the customs of this star zone. Loyalty and trust. That's just a joke. He could only be at ease with power in his own hands. Time quietly passed. For the next half a month, God King Evil Soul had been dealing with important military matters. He commanded the various stars and the many generals who led the troops into battle. Under his command, more than 20 armies had split up and attacked God King Blue Scorpion's territory, crazily occupying one planet after another. These armies had more than 200 God Kings, more than 20,000 God Lords, and several 100,000 heavenly God soldiers. The various armies advanced side by side, beating the generals under Blue Scorpion God King until they were forced to retreat again and again, utterly routed. God King Evil Soul would receive news of victory from the front lines almost every 2 days. On the sand table in the middle of the conference hall, the number of blue planets was decreasing, turning red one after another. God King Evil Soul was in a great mood. Standing in front of the sand table, he could already imagine the beautiful scene of the entire Scorpion Star Zone under his rule. He had even imagined the scene of God King Blue Scorpion kneeling before him and begging for mercy in the final battle after all of God King Blue Scorpion's territory had fallen. When he thought of this beautiful future, he couldn't help but laugh. Until 20 days later, he suddenly received a message jade slip from God King Cheng. All of his beautiful fantasies were shattered, and his originally excited mood quickly cooled down as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. In these 20 days, Ji Tianxing had been casting arts on that abandoned planet, devouring the entire planet. As time passed, the silver planet rapidly shrank every day. His strength steadily increased, and the five elements world obtained an abundant amount of spirit qi and madly grew. It was neither too long nor too short. 20 days had just ended, and the entire star had been devoured by him. After finishing the spell, Ji Tianxing put away the heaven-mending bead and prepared to leave. But right at this time, 4 divine king powerhouses led 300 divine lord powerhouses and surrounded them from all directions. These godly kings and godly lords of other races all had complicated expressions. They were shocked and fearful. While he was filled with vigilance, he was also filled with murderous intent. This was because they had arrived near the abandoned planet 2 days ago. Back then, when they saw that the silver star had shrunk to a diameter of several million li, everyone was astonished. The 4 god kings even thought that they had seen wrongly. They clearly remembered that the silver star was very large, with a diameter of at least 30 million miles. They realized that the situation was not good, so they did not act rashly. They hid in the dark and continued to observe. Over the next 2 days, they saw with their own eyes that the silver star rapidly shrank until it disappeared. That foreign god king actually destroyed the entire planet. This was the conclusion that the 4 divine kings and 300 divine monarchs came to. At the same time, they also knew that no matter how powerful and mysterious the other party was, it was time for them to appear. Therefore, they braced themselves and appeared, forming a battle formation to surround Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing stood in the void and calmly scanned the crowd. Finally, his gaze landed on the 4 divine kings. He did not need to ask to guess that these divine kings and godly lords were definitely here to take revenge for those people from before. Therefore, he did not plan to waste his breath. He directly took out the sword of burial of heaven and expressionlessly accumulated his divine power, preparing to fight. However, the 300 divine monarchs were anxious, and the 4 divine kings also had something to say. Wait. The leader, Divine King Xiongcheng, sized up Ji Tianxing with a scrutinizing gaze and asked, "Sir, you should know why we are here. You killed General Shu Yi and thousands of soldiers." Ji Tianxing replied expressionlessly, "Of course I know. You are here for revenge." Divine King Xiongcheng frowned. The other party's calmness and confidence made him feel a little guilty. Therefore, he imagined that he could resolve this matter without fighting. "Sir, perhaps there is some misunderstanding. I am not only here for revenge, I am also here to investigate the truth." Divine King Xiongcheng was quick-witted and wanted to ease the atmosphere. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and looked at him expressionlessly, not saying a word. Divine King Xiongcheng saw that he was not in a hurry to attack and knew that he was not an evil person. A glimmer of hope appeared in his heart as he hurriedly asked, "Sir, are you Divine King Blue Scorpion's subordinate?" "No," Ji Tianxing replied indifferently. Divine King Xiongcheng's eyes lit up as he asked again, "Then are you Divine King Blue Scorpion's friend or helper?" "Also no." Divine King Xiongcheng was not the only one who heaved a sigh of relief. The other 3 divine kings and 300 divine monarchs all looked relieved. "Sigh, as I said, this is just a misunderstanding." Divine King Xiongcheng squeezed out a smile and did not feel that his expression was hideous at all. He explained, "Sir should know that we are Divine King Evil Soul's subordinates. And you shouldn't have any enmity with our Divine King Evil Soul either, right?" "Of course not," Ji Tianxing answered truthfully, wanting to see what this guy wanted to do. Divine King Xiongcheng was immediately overjoyed and hurriedly waved his hand and ordered, "All put away your weapons. This is a misunderstanding. Everyone, relax." The 3 divine kings and 300 divine monarch experts put away their weapons one after another. Of course, this was just on the surface. They still did not relax their vigilance in their hearts. Divine King Xiongcheng squeezed out a kind smile and explained, "Sir, since it's a misunderstanding, then we don't need to meet each other with weapons. It's just that great General Shu Yi and the 4 divine generals, as well as those 1,000 divine monarchs, were indeed killed by you. Although we don't have the intention of blaming you. But it's reasonable for you to make a trip with us and meet Divine King Evil Soul. Presumably, as long as you explain clearly to Divine King Evil Soul face to face and apologize, this matter can be dropped. Furthermore, our Lord Divine King is thirsty for talents and loves to make friends with all kinds of eccentric people and senior experts the most. With your strength and talent, you'll definitely receive Divine King Evil Soul's favor. Hearing Divine King Xiongcheng's words, the other 3 divine kings and 300 divine monarchs all secretly nodded their heads to express praise, very impressed in their hearts. Well deserving of being a cunning old fox, this move is truly brilliant. This foreign race divine king's strength is very strong. We clearly can't beat him. At most, we can only fight until both sides suffer. But with Divine King Xiongcheng saying this, we don't need to fight desperately anymore. Heh. As long as we trick that guy back, when he arrives in front of Divine King Evil Soul, he'll be dead for sure. Chapter 39:28. The 303 people were secretly delighted. They were impressed by Divine King Xiongcheng's wit. However, Ji Tianxing only said one word when he saw Divine King Xiongcheng's sincere and expectant expression. Scram. Divine King Xiongcheng's smile froze on his face. The 303 non-human cultivators frowned as their hearts were filled with rage. That damned foreign race bastard. He was too arrogant. He didn't know what was good for him. He had to be killed. This thought flashed through many people's minds. They all had the urge to give it a try. However, Divine King Xiongcheng suppressed his anger and continued to persuade Ji Tianxing. How can you be so rude? We came here with sincerity. You might not know, but Divine King Evil Soul is one of the 2 overlords. He is destined to defeat Divine King Blue Scorpion and become the ruler of the Scorpion Galaxy. No matter how strong you are still alone. Divine King Xiongcheng sneered and threatened Ji Tianxing with Divine King Evil Soul's power. However, before he could finish, Ji Tianxing lost his patience. He pointed his sword at Divine King Xiongcheng and shouted, "If you want to fight, then fight. If you don't, then scram." Such arrogant behavior instantly enraged Divine King Xiongcheng, the other 3 divine kings, and the 300 divine monarchs. The crowd was enraged. They all pulled out their weapons and glared at Ji Tianxing with murderous intent. Divine King Xiongcheng's face darkened. He sneered, "What an arrogant and reckless brat. I have given you enough face, but you don't know how to appreciate it. Since that's the case, I will send you to your death. Kill him." Following Divine King Xiongcheng's order, the 300 divine monarchs joined forces and unleashed powerful divine abilities. They surrounded Ji Tianxing. Divine King Xiongcheng also waved his 2 giant axes and slashed out 2 crimson rays of light that were 10,000 feet long toward Ji Tianxing. Dazzling divine light illuminated the surrounding 10,000 miles. Violent divine power fluctuations rippled through the void. Ji Tianxing was heavily besieged, but he was fearless. He waved the Sword of Burial of Heaven and launched a counterattack. Sun-shattering sword. 7 stars sword. Mystic light 1000 slash. With a wave of the divine sword, hundreds of dazzling sword lights burst forth in all directions, and a terrifying divine might suddenly erupted. Bang 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 bang. The sword light collided with the divine light and shadow, causing a loud bang and countless fragments of divine light to splatter. The divine powers cast by the 300 Sir Gods were instantly defeated by Ji Tianxing. When the attacks of the 4 God Kings landed on his body, they were blocked by the faint golden light on the surface of his body. With the protection of the indestructible golden body, even a peak divine king would find it hard to injure him, let alone these 4 high divine kings. However, the sword light that filled the sky brought about a calamity to everyone. Following the muffled sound, a series of tragic howls sounded. The 4 God Kings were sent flying as blood splattered all over the sky. Dozens of Sir God experts were torn to shreds by the sword light, and countless pieces of flesh fell to the ground. This was the first round of the battle between the 2 sides. Ji Tianxing was unscathed, and his expression was calm. He did not even take a deep breath. However, the 4 God Kings were heavily injured, and they were in a sorry state. Dozens of Sir Gods were killed on the spot, and more than 20 Sir Gods were severely injured. Such a stark contrast allowed everyone to witness Ji Tianxing's terrifying strength, and they were filled with fear. However, no matter how frightened they were, they could not immediately turn around and run away. Losing face was secondary. If God King Evil Soul knew that they were so cowardly, he would definitely punish them severely. As a result, the 4 divine kings rallied their forces and once again led over 200 divine lords to launch a second siege. They were still going all out, using all kinds of divine powers, ultimate skills, and ultimate killing moves. Divine light flashed all over the sky, and all kinds of lights and shadows danced. The momentum and commotion were huge. However, this did not affect Ji Tianxing at all. His left hand used all kinds of palm techniques, fist techniques, and finger techniques, while his right hand waved his sword and used sword Dao divine powers. When he was multitasking, the divine powers and ultimate skills that he used were still powerful. Bam! 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 Boom! Boom! There was another deafening sound, and it was mixed with the sound of explosions. As for everyone's exclamations, shouts, curses, and screams, they were all drowned out by the loud sounds. After a few breaths, the second round of the battle ended. This time, the outcome was even more tragic. More than 220 Sir God experts were blasted into pieces on the spot, scattering in the void. The 3 high-level God Kings had their divine bodies destroyed by the sword light, and their divine sparks were also severely injured as they floated in the void. Even God King Xiongcheng's divine body was on the verge of collapse, like a cracked porcelain vase. The dozens of Sir God experts who were lucky enough to survive were scared out of their wits. Ji Tianxing's strength was too terrifying, and they did not dare to attack at all. They all screamed and fled into the depths of the starry sky. The 4 God Kings still cared about their dignity and shouted angrily a few times. Unfortunately, those Sir Gods were in a hurry to escape and did not listen to their shouts at all. Soon, they disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, the 4 God Kings did not persist. They did not even need to use voice transmissions to discuss. They all turned and fled at the same time. What was even more tacit was that they actually fled in 2 different directions. However, this was not a problem for Ji Tianxing. With a flash, he teleported thousands of miles and caught up with the 2 injured divine sparks. He raised his hand and swung his sword. In a flash of light, the 2 divine sparks were shattered into pieces. Ji Tianxing waved his left hand and kept the divine sparks in his bag. His figure flashed again and teleported 20,000 miles in the void, catching up with God King Xiongcheng and the other divine sparks. Swish! 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 Another sword slash. After a flash of golden light, the divine sparks were shattered into pieces. God King Xiongcheng was also killed on the spot. His body was destroyed, and his divine sparks were shattered. At this point, the 4 foreign race God Kings were all killed. Ji Tianxing put away the divine sparks and rode on the sword of burial of heaven, continuing to fly into the depths of the star field. As for the dozens of Sir Gods who were fleeing in all directions, he could not be bothered to chase after them. He let them escape. It did not matter if those Sir Gods lived or died. In any case, they were not a threat to him. However, he felt that these high God Kings needed to be eliminated. As the sword of burial of heaven flew into the depths of the starry sky, he summarized the information he had just received and analyzed the current situation. These people are all subordinates of God King Evil Soul. God King Evil Soul and God King Blue Scorpion are irreconcilable. They are fighting over the position of Master of the Starfield. In that case, Long Yang and I did not kill the Golden Crow Patriarch back then. As expected, enmity arose between him and God King Blue Scorpion. When God King Evil Soul learned of this, he was certain that God King Blue Scorpion had lost his backer and was at his weakest. Thus, God King Evil Soul decisively launched an attack and invaded God King Blue Scorpion's territory. Right now, God King Blue Scorpion must be having a headache and retreating in defeat, right? God King Blue Scorpion and God King Evil Soul were fighting to the death over the position of Master of the Starfield. However, Ji Tianxing had no interest in this position and could not be bothered to meddle in other people's business. However, there was a small question in his heart that he could not help but mutter to himself. The 9 great star fields all have their own overlords. Most of them have been occupied by the 5 god emperors. Even the Sacred Dragon Emperor, Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, and Arphiuchus have each occupied a star field. However, why has this Scorpion star field not been occupied by any power? Why is it being fought over by 2 foreign race god kings? Book Guest Residence Reading Website. Chapter 3929. In the depths of Scorpio Galaxy, distant star. In the depths of the vast sea, in the divine palace at the peak of the Sea of Clouds. God King Evil Soul was currently in the meeting hall, standing in front of the sand table, holding the message he sent back to God King Seong Cheng, his expression ugly to the extreme. He had already finished reading the contents of the message Jade Slip. But he stood on the spot and was silent for a long time, not making a sound. But the scarlet eyes under the cloak flickered with surging fury. Under the black robe, his entire body was bursting with sharp killing intent. It was because this message was sent back to Divine King Seong Cheng before he died. In the message, God King Seong Cheng described the situation of the battle at that time, and used the words unparalleled valiance, unrivaled to describe Ji Tianxing's strength. God King Evil Soul did not need to ask and could guess that God King Seong Cheng, 3 high-ranking God Kings, and 300 God Lord experts should have all died in battle. 4 high-level divine kings were killed, causing his forces to weaken further. Those were 4 great generals who were good at war and had made countless contributions to the army. God King Evil Soul's heart ached and was furious, but also felt deeply helpless. After all, he was the commander. It was impossible for him to personally rush over to kill Ji Tianxing. Moreover, according to God King Seong Cheng's description, Ji Tianxing's strength was so powerful that it already surpassed him. Although God King Evil Soul was 9th stage realm strength. But he knew that he could not be like Ji Tianxing, instantly killing over 200 God Lord experts and 3 high-ranking God Kings in 3 moves. God King Evil Soul could not possibly take the risk himself, and also did not have the confidence to defeat Ji Tianxing. But his subordinates, the strongest one was only at the initial stage of the 9th level God King realm. No matter how hard he thought about it, he still didn't know who to send to kill Ji Tianxing. Rustle, rustle, rustle. God King Evil Soul paced back and forth in the great hall. After suppressing his anger, he started to think of countermeasures. Although God King Seong Cheng had probed before, that person claimed to have nothing to do with Blue Scorpion God King, and also has no enmity with this seat. But how can that person's words be believed? He has already broken into my territory and killed more than 1,000 soldiers under my command, including several capable generals. If he is not killed as soon as possible and is allowed to roam freely in my territory, there is no telling how many generals and star lords he will assassinate. At that time, my territory will fall into chaos, and he alone will be able to contain my army. No, I have to get rid of this disaster no matter what. In the Scorpio star zone, various races lived together. The law of the jungle had always been followed. The strong preyed on the weak. This place was filled with mutual deception. There was never any kindness or trust to speak of. Even if Ji Tianxing told God King Evil Soul that he had nothing to do with God King Blue Scorpion, God King Evil Soul wouldn't believe him. The Evil Soul God King only wanted to get rid of those who harmed his interests and were beyond his control. After making up his mind, God King Evil Soul issued another order to the messengers in the corner of the hall. Contact Divine King Seong Cheng and the 3 great generals, as well as the 300 divine monarch experts they brought with them. See if there are any survivors. If there are, ask them about the course of the battle and the movements of that foreign god king. The messengers bowed and hurriedly left to carry out their mission. God King Evil Soul returned to his seat of honor and sat down on his black skeletal throne to wait. About an hour later, the messengers returned to the hall one after another to report the results. Reporting to the Domain Lord, we can't contact Divine King Seong Cheng and the 3 great generals. Their soul jade tablets in the Martyr's Palace have all shattered. Reporting to the Domain Lord, this subordinate went to the Martyr's Palace to count the soul jade tablets and discovered that the jade tablets of 256 divine monarchs had shattered. Reporting to the Domain Lord, 44 of them survived. This subordinate managed to contact 30 or so of them. They all claimed that they hid in the dark to observe the situation after arriving at the abandoned planet. They saw with their own eyes that the alien godly king had destroyed the entire planet. Divine King Seong-cheng tried to trick that person into returning and handing him over to you, but that person didn't fall for it. The messengers each carried out their own duties. The last messenger who reported the news combined the words of more than 30 Divine Lord experts and told God King Evil Soul about the specific process. After God King Evil Soul finished listening, the scarlet eyes under the cloak clearly flickered several times, revealing a trace of shock. That alien godly king actually destroyed the entire waste star? It's just a lifeless, useless planet. Why would he destroy it? God King Evil Soul muttered to himself, then asked, "Does anyone know what that foreign god king did after the battle ended?" The last messenger hurriedly bowed and reported again, reporting to the domain lord, the 30 or so divine monarchs that survived all scattered and fled. A dozen or so divine monarchs saw that foreign god king flying toward the depths of the star field. If he doesn't change direction, he'll reach the distant star soon. God King Evil Soul was instantly enraged. He growled with killing intent, "Despicable bastard, he's clearly the Blue Scorpion God King's helper, deliberately disrupting this seat's territory. He actually claimed that he has nothing to do with the Blue Scorpion God King. Does he think we're 3 years old?" God King Evil Soul was enraged. Outside his black robe, raging flames ignited. The few messengers were trembling with fear, not daring to even breathe loudly. After a moment, God King Evil Soul's anger finally subsided. He thought to himself, "That person can destroy the entire planet. I'm afraid his strength is above this seat. Just based on this seat's soldiers, I'm afraid they won't be able to kill him. If I gather dozens of God Kings and thousands of divine monarchs, I'll definitely be able to kill him. But in this way, there won't be enough manpower at the front line and there won't be any generals who can lead the troops into battle. Ha ha ha, a 9th stage God King messed up this seat's attack plan. Blue Scorpion God King, you're really scheming." While sneering in his heart, God King Evil Soul took out a communication jade letter and entered a message. "Respected God King Eternal Wind, you've urged this subordinate many times to quickly get rid of the Blue Scorpion God King and control the entire Scorpion starfield. This subordinate has not forgotten your instructions for a single day. For the past 2 months, this subordinate took the opportunity when the Blue Scorpion God King fell out with the Golden Crow clan and decisively sent out troops to attack. We've already defeated the Blue Scorpion God King and occupied over 20 stars. Originally, when you came to the distant star, the final battle would have reached its final stage. You can also see with your own eyes that this subordinate defeated the Blue Scorpion God King and controlled the entire starfield. But just a month ago, a foreign race God King barged into this subordinate's territory and assassinated several God King generals. This person's strength is above this subordinate's and he must be the Blue Scorpion God King's helper. He wants to use his own strength to restrict this subordinate's attack plan. Unfortunately, this subordinate has to stay in the distant star and command the army in the middle. Otherwise, this subordinate will personally lead the troops to kill that foreign race God King. The plan now is for Lord God King to hurry back and personally get rid of that foreign race God King. With Lord God King's godly methods, it will be as easy as flipping your palm." Chapter 39:30. Clearly, Divine King Evil Soul realized that Ji Tianxing's strength was too powerful. He could not afford to provoke him, but he also did not wish to have Ji Tianxing ruin his attack plan. Therefore, he transmitted a message to Divine King Longwind to seek help. Whoosh! The transmission jade slip carried his heart full of hope and turned into a beam of spirit light that flew out of the Divine Palace, vanishing into the horizon. Divine King Evil Soul stared at the sand table in the hall and secretly sneered coldly in his heart. "Divine King Longwind, although you're a peak Divine King with formidable strength, I've submitted you to me for hundreds of years. I have submitted to you for hundreds of years, but you treated me like a slave and ordered me around as you wished. But you've only shown your face more than a dozen times to this day. You're always busy. This time, you have to put in the effort and eliminate that foreign race Divine King personally. Otherwise, unifying the entire Scorpio starfield is all my credit and has nothing to do with you at all." At the end of the day, Divine King Evil Soul submitted to Divine King Longwind's strength, but he was unwilling and dissatisfied in his heart. He had always been scheming that after unifying the Scorpio starfield, he would rely on this gargantuan contribution to establish ties with the powerhouse behind Divine King Longwind. Only then would he have the chance to become a peak Divine King. Once he became a peak Divine King, he would no longer need to look at Divine King Longwind's face. At that time, he would be one of the 9 great overlords in the starry sky, his authority overwhelming. Unknowingly, another 2 hours passed. Whoosh! A beam of spirit light flew over from the horizon and landed in front of Divine King Evil Soul. After the golden light faded, a transmission jade slip with a special shape appeared. This was the transmission jade slip that he used to communicate with Divine King Longwind. Divine King Evil Soul picked up the transmission jade slip and read the message inside with his divine sense. Immediately, a deep and dignified old man's voice sounded out in his mind. Evil Soul, you can't even finish off a foreign race Divine King. You disappoint this seat too much. Over 200 years ago, this seat urged you repeatedly to take control of the Scorpio starfield as soon as possible and not delay Lord Supreme's plan. And you delayed until now and finally found a chance to take action, but you were hindered by a foreign race Divine King. You have over 100 Divine Kings under your command and millions of soldiers. That foreign race Divine King isn't a peak Divine King. You can't even kill him. This seat expresses doubts about your ability. I'm on my way to Faraway Star. It will take me more than a month to reach there. Now, I'll give you one last chance. You will personally lead the soldiers to eliminate that alien God King. If you can't do it, then don't blame me for reporting to Lord Supreme and asking for a new domain lord to take control of the Scorpio galaxy. There wasn't much information in the jade slip, but every sentence was very sharp. The dignified tone was filled with anger, and there was also a hint of arrogance. God King Evil Soul was instantly enraged after reading the message. His black claws crushed the jade slip into pieces. Goddamn old man. Other than using that Lord Supreme martial artist to threaten me, have you ever made any contribution at all? If it weren't for the fact that I'm weaker than you, I would have cut you into pieces sooner or later. In his rage, the God King Evil Soul could not help but curse. You actually want me to personally deal with that foreign God King? If I disobey, someone else will be in charge of the Scorpio galaxy? What an arrogant tone, truly arrogant and ignorant. The Evil Soul Deity King was unable to restrain his anger, and he felt extremely aggrieved. He had always insisted that he was the most suitable person to be the Scorpio Galaxy Lord. Unfortunately, his strength was inferior. If he did not submit to God King Changfeng, he would be obliterated. At the same time, he had to rely on God King Changfeng as his backer to defeat God King Blue Scorpion. Especially the supreme martial artist that God King Changfeng mentioned. He was the target that he deliberately wanted to get in touch with. He had heard many rumors and analyzed them. He came to a shocking conclusion. That supreme martial artist was able to make a peak God King submit to him and do his best to run errands. He was very likely an expert above the God King realm. God King Evil Soul did not know what realm was above the God King realm. However, he believed that supreme martial artist would definitely have a way to help him become a peak God King. A moment later, God King Evil Soul regained his composure. He ordered in a dignified tone, "Send orders to the Star Lords in the southwest. Order them to closely monitor the movements in the void and investigate the movements of that alien God King. Also, summon Marshal Laiming to see me." A few messengers acknowledged the order and hurriedly went to carry out the mission. Not long after, a burly alien God King strode into the conference hall with his head held high. This alien God King had the upper body of a human but the lower body of a purple flame demon wolf. He had 4 hooves and a tail. He wore purple lightning armor and had a sharp horn on his head. He exuded a violent and fierce aura. This was Marshal Laiming. He was an early-stage 9th Heaven God King. He was the godson of the Evil Soul God King, and also the second most powerful person under the Evil Soul God King. Although he was a brave general with a high prestige in the Scorpio space zone, and many generals admired and were loyal to him, he was still a general of the Scorpion space zone. However, God King Evil Soul was naturally suspicious. When he saw that Marshal Laiming's prestige and power were increasing, he had the intention to suppress him. He was also worried that Marshal Leiming would go against his orders one day and take away his position as the Star Zone Master. Therefore, he personally commanded the attack on God King Blue Scorpion's territory. He even left Marshal Leiming on the distant star and did not allow him to participate in the battle. Marshal Leiming and many other generals were well aware of this point. There was no other way. Marshal Leiming's military achievements were outstanding and his power was overwhelming. He could not be given a title or reward. Other than the position of Star Zone Master, God King Evil Soul had nothing else to give him. Under such circumstances, it was natural for Marshal Leiming to be suppressed. "Godfather, what instructions do you have for me?" Marshal Leiming stood in the hall and bowed to God King Evil Soul as he asked respectfully. Although he could not fight on the battlefield, he was still a little resentful. However, in front of God King Evil Soul, he did not dare to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction lest he attract a fatal disaster. God King Evil Soul stared at him for a while before saying earnestly, "Leiming, I know that you have misunderstood me and have some resentment in your heart. However, you must know that I am doing this for your own good. I don't allow you to fight on the front lines because I have something more important to hand to you." Marshal Leiming naturally did not believe in such rubbish, but he still revealed an agitated look as he hurriedly asked, "Godfather, please instruct me. I will do my best." God King Evil Soul's tone was calm as he said, although God King Blue Scorpion and Golden Crow clan had fallen out, he had colluded with a 9th stage realm foreign race God King. In the past month, that foreign race God King had killed several of our generals and even massacred 1,000 over God Monarch experts. Now, that foreign race God King had barged into this seat's territory and is heading straight for the distant star. Hearing this, Marshal Leiming put on a stance as he rubbed his palms together and hurriedly said, "Godfather, please give the order. I will lead the elite troops to kill that foreign race God King." Chapter 39-31. Marshal Thundercry naturally thought that Divine King Heretic Soul wanted to send him to kill Ji Tianxing. After all, he also heard about that foreign race Divine King and knew that that person's strength was very formidable. This sort of life-threatening mission, he had completed God knows how many times and was long used to it. But this time, he guessed wrong. Divine King Heretic Soul stared at him and fell silent for a moment. But other thoughts surfaced in his mind. "Little bastard, the moment you heard that you want to lead troops into battle, you're so impatient. If I really let you lead troops to kill that foreign race Divine King, this seat would be defying Divine King Longwind's orders, while you'll have rendered a great service. At that time, when Divine King Longwind comes to the distant star, he'll probably have you replace this seat to be the master of this stellar region." Thinking up to here, Divine King Heretic Soul's scarlet eyes also became a little colder. "No, you're wrong." He looked at Marshal Thundercry and said earnestly, "That foreign race Divine King's strength is very strong, even above Foster Father's. You're not his match. Foster Father won't send you to your death. This time, Foster Father will personally lead troops to go and kill him. And you will stay in the Divine Palace to hold down the fort and command the battle at the front lines. You have to remember that you absolutely can't slow down the offensive. You must defeat the Blue Scorpion Divine King in one go. If you miss this opportunity, who knows how many years you'll have to wait to defeat him again in the future." "Ah!" Marshal Thundercry was stunned on the spot, only finding it incredulous. "Foster Father, you're the Commander-in-Chief. How can you personally lead troops to kill a powerful enemy? This sort of dangerous matter should be left to this child." Marshal Thundercry understood Divine King Heretic Soul's nature very well. He knew that his foster father was not only suspicious by nature, but he also cherished his life very much. This decision today was seriously too abnormal. Divine King Heretic Soul said in a dignified tone, "Thundercry, don't question this seat's decision. This is an order." Marshal Thundercry's expression turned stiff. He could only bow and say, "This child obeys. Foster Father, set your mind at ease and go to war. This child definitely won't let you down." Divine King Heretic Soul nodded his head in satisfaction and said, "That foreign race Divine King's strength is too strong. This seat setting off this time, I must kill him in one blow. Therefore, the 9 divine generals and the 16 star lords in the Divine Palace will follow me to the battle. In this way, there will only be a few divine kings left in the divine palace. Their forces will be weak. You must be on your guard. Nothing must go wrong. Hearing this, a strange look flashed across Marshal Lei Ming's eyes as he sneered in his heart. He. Godfather, oh Godfather, you're still on guard against me. You are afraid that after you go to war, I will take control of the divine palace and take over your position. Therefore, you took away the 25 high god kings who were loyal to you, and the divine palace was only left with an empty shell. Even if I wanted to rebel, I would only get a useless divine palace. He thought so in his heart, but he couldn't say it out loud. Marshal Lei Ming bowed and accepted the order. Foster father is risking your life to kill a strong enemy, so you should bring more men. With those 25 god kings, not only will they be able to protect you, they'll also be able to kill foreign god kings successfully. This is a wise decision. Please don't worry, foster father. I will guard the celestial palace well. Nothing will go wrong. God King Evil Soul nodded in satisfaction and said, good. Then prepare to take over the intelligence reports and begin to control the overall situation. Within 3 days, I will lead the troops to war once I have received accurate information. Marshal Lei Ming didn't say anything else. After acknowledging the order, he left the meeting hall. God King Evil Soul also issued several orders to gather the 9 great god kings and 16 star lords. Apart from these 25 high god kings, he also wanted to take away 10 intermediate god kings and 1,000 high god lords. This was practically the strongest force in the divine palace. After he set out for battle, what he left for Marshal Thundercry was only over 3,000 divine lord realm guards and several middle-level divine kings. In the next 2 days, the dozens of star lords in the southwest all sent messages to God King Evil Soul. Most of the star lords reported that they hadn't detected anything unusual and hadn't seen that foreign god king. Only a few star lords detected unusual movements in the void. They did their best to send out all their scouts and spies, and discovered that a mysterious expert was hurrying through the void. Although no one knew what that expert looked like, based on his flying speed, it was obvious that he was one of the best among the god kings. God King Evil Soul combined the reports of the Star Lords and confirmed one thing. That damned foreign god king is indeed heading toward the distant star. If there are no accidents, he'll probably arrive in a few months. Based on his current tracks and speed, he should be near planet Yocheong. After confirming Ji Tianxing's tracks and route, God King Evil Soul decisively led the many god kings and nearly 1,000 high god lords and set off on a divine warship. So many god kings and god lords boarded his Evil Soul warship and left planet Yocheong, heading straight for planet Yocheong. The Evil Soul warship was one of God King Evil Soul's trump cards that allowed him to dominate the Scorpion Star Zone. He had spent hundreds of years of effort and thousands of years of savings to build this king-grade divine warship. Its attack power was strong, its defense was strong, and its flying speed was extremely fast. The battleship was like a black ghost, silently advancing through the void. On the way, God King Evil Soul was still analyzing the situation. I'm heading toward planet Yocheong. That guy is coming from planet Yocheong. In at most a month and a half, we'll meet near planet Flying Deer. At that time, we'll fight in the void and make it his burial ground. God King Evil Soul had 35 god kings and 1,000 high god lords by his side. He was full of confidence. He believed that even if the other party was a peak divine king, he would also be smashed to pieces under the besiegement of so many powerhouses, perishing with hatred. At the same time, on a certain star in the center of the Scorpion Star Zone. This star with a diameter of more than 300 million miles was inconspicuous in God King Blue Scorpion's territory. However, it was not far from the front lines of the battle. About a dozen stars ahead of them was the battlefield where the two armies were fighting. God King Blue Scorpion was different from God King Evil Soul. He would not stay in his base and command the battle through a communication jade slip. Ever since God King Evil Soul sent his army to attack 2 months ago, he had been commanding the front lines with his trusted aides and generals. At this time, God King Blue Scorpion was holding a top-secret message and discussing important matters with his generals in the conference hall. I believe everyone knows that a few hundred years ago, I sent over 500 spies to infiltrate God King Evil Soul's base in batches. Unfortunately, most of the spies were eliminated in these few hundred years, and some spies defected. There are only a few spies left, and they're still hiding in Distant Star. One of them is hiding in God King Evil Soul's Divine Palace. When God King Evil Soul was overseeing the Divine Palace, he did not dare to act rashly, so he did not send back any news. Just now, he sent back a message. God King Evil Soul is leading over 30 God Kings and close to 1,000 High God elites toward planet Yocheong. His intentions are unknown. Currently, only Marshal Lei Yiming is overseeing the Divine Palace. It's almost an empty shell. Chapter 39-32. Other than the Blue Scorpion God King, there were over 20 other God King generals in the discussion hall. They were all his trusted subordinates. Half of them were the Star Lords of nearby planets. When everyone heard the news from the Blue Scorpion God King, they immediately became excited and expectant. Many of the generals couldn't help but open their mouths to discuss the matter or give suggestions to the Blue Scorpion God King. We all know that the Evil Soul Deity King is suspicious by nature, and is especially wary of his adopted son, Marshal Lei Yiming. When he leaves the Distant Star, he will definitely bring most of the experts with him. Ever since the start of the war, we've been in a very passive situation. We've been beaten back repeatedly. This is a good opportunity for us to fight back. Alliance Master, since the Distant Star is empty and only Marshal Lei Yiming is there, we can launch a sneak attack. No matter what the God King Evil Soul is doing, we will destroy his lair. To him, this is definitely a huge blow. Lord Alliance Master, this general believes that it is wisest to first investigate the Evil Soul God King's intentions before making a decision. Please contact the spy and ask him to investigate this matter. This general believes that there is no need to ambush the Evil Soul God King's lair. The most important thing is to gather the troops and rush to the Yucheongxing region to kill the Evil Soul Deity King. That's right. God King Evil Soul had brought over 30 God Kings and 1,000 High God Lords. It sounded like a very powerful force. But we can gather even more experts and soldiers, and we will definitely be able to kill the Evil Soul Deity King. As long as the Evil Soul God King dies, his army will be defeated without a fight, and our crisis will be resolved. But have you all thought about it? Even if the Evil Soul God King dies, his adopted son, Marshal Lei Yiming, will definitely take over. At that time, Marshal Lei Yiming will still attack us in the name of avenging foster father. Don't worry, once the Evil Soul Divine King dies, the forces under him will definitely fall into chaos. Even if Marshal Lei Yiming wanted to take over, it would be a long time before he could do so. Who knows, we might be able to take advantage of the situation and counterattack. Only half of the over 20 Divine King Realm generals were talking about it. Even so, the hall was still very noisy. The Blue Scorpion God King did not get angry. He only calmly listened to everyone's discussion. Since he had gathered everyone for a discussion, he wanted to listen to everyone's opinions. After everyone finished speaking, the Blue Scorpion God King slapped the table, indicating for everyone to quiet down. He said in a dignified tone, "Everyone's words have their own reasons, and they are indeed feasible methods. However, after careful consideration, I have decided to gather more godly kings and godly monarchs to make a trip to planet Yocheong. Attacking the Evil Soul God King's lair was meaningless. If he could kill him, he would be able to resolve the current crisis. Taking a step back, even if we can't kill God King Evil Soul, we can at least find out what he's trying to do. I believe everyone knows that the Evil Soul Deity King cherishes his life. For so many years, he had been staying in his lair in the Distant Star. He didn't move around at all, let alone go to the battlefield to kill enemies. Since he left Faraway Star and went to Poor Star, there must be a reason. Since the Blue Scorpion God King had made his decision, the 20-odd generals could only follow his orders. Afterward, God King Blue Scorpion issued several orders and began to gather even more God Kings and elites. More than 20 generals also left the meeting hall one after another to carry out their mission. In a short 2 days, more than 20 God Kings led more than 1,000 godly monarchs to report on the completion of the mission. The Blue Scorpion God King mobilized so many people, causing the front lines to become tense. However, He ordered the generals at the front lines to not counterattack in the short term and to do their best to defend. If the enemy's offensive was too fierce, they could also choose to strategically retreat to preserve their strength. Just like that, on the morning of the third day, the Blue Scorpion God King led a group of elite soldiers to battle. In the two divine ships, there were a total of 48 God Kings and 3,000 godly monarchs. With such a powerful force, the Blue Scorpion God King had an 80% chance of killing the evil Soul Deity King if they encountered him. Ever since he killed God King Xiong Cheng and the others, Ji Tianxing had been traveling the cosmos. Although he guessed that the evil Soul Deity King might send a large force to kill him to avenge the dead soldiers, he was not worried at all. He continued to fly into the depths of the Scorpion star zone. Along the way, he encountered more than 20 stars. Most of these stars had living beings and all kinds of foreign races gathered there. As for the few wasted stars he encountered, they were all extremely barren and desolate, containing very few resources. If he refined these wasted stars, not only would he waste time, he would also not gain much. Thus, the Sword of Burial of Heaven continued to fly into the depths of the star zone. Ji Tianxing remained in the distorted spacetime and continued to cultivate. While cultivating in seclusion, he would often ponder a question. If Master had perished in the Scorpion star zone back then, would he have alarmed some God King experts? Or perhaps, would he have left behind some traces? How should I investigate to find clues? Every time I pass by a star, I will capture the Star Lord and many God Kings and ask them if they know anything about this matter. Every time he thought of this question, Ji Tianxing would feel deeply moved. Even though he already had the strength of a peak God King, compared to the vast star zone, he was still too insignificant. If he really did this, finding clues was secondary. Most importantly, he would have to spend 100 years. Investigating the Scorpion star zone would take 100 years. If he were to investigate all 9 star zones, it would take at least 1,000 years. Thus, Ji Tianxing could only give up on this stupid and time-wasting method. He had to think of a better way to find clues about his master's death as quickly as possible. Unknowingly, a month passed. Ji Tianxing discovered that the deeper he went into the Scorpion star zone, the fewer wasted stars around him. On the contrary, the stars inhabited by living beings were each larger than the last. Their diameters exceeded 500 million miles, and they could accommodate hundreds of trillions of living beings. After much difficulty, he found another wasted star. This barren star was only 40 million miles in diameter, and its surface emitted a faint golden light. When he arrived near the golden star, he used his divine sense to investigate carefully and discovered that the wasted star contained a large amount of metal and/or veins. There were many precious divine metals on the star, and even some metals he had never seen before. Thus, Ji Tianxing decisively descended on this star, took out the heaven-mending orb, and began to devour the star. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 10 days passed quickly. Under his and the heaven-mending orb's devouring, the golden star shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. The heaven-mending orb devoured a huge amount of divine power, and once again brought a spiritual energy storm to the 5 elements realm. Ji Tianxing also obtained a huge amount of divine power, and his strength increased by another step. At the same time, he also summoned Yank and had Yank mine the ore veins and metals, refining many precious divine metals. Chapter 39-33. Ji Tianxing and the heaven-mending orb were devouring the star with all their might. Yank went underground to look for rare ores and metals, mining happily. However, they did not know that this star had been a famous ore star for thousands of years. Divine King powerhouses from the surrounding few stars would come here every few days to gather resources and search for precious artifact refinement materials. While at this time, on the other end of the star, there were currently 2 Divine King powerhouses leading several dozen Divine Lord realm experts, collecting all kinds of ores and metals. These foreign race experts came from the Flying Deer star, which was hundreds of millions of miles away. They were 2 famous divine blacksmiths on the Flying Deer star. They had brought dozens of disciples to collect resources and learn how to identify rare ores and metals. They had come to this ore star a month ago. For a whole month, they lived a fulfilling and interesting life. They were happy. However, in recent days, they were anxious and restless. They could not be happy, because they found that the ore star was shrinking. Moreover, it was shrinking at an exaggerated speed that was almost visible to the naked eye. This caused the dozens of disciples to be frightened and uneasy, and they were puzzled. The two divine blacksmiths were also puzzled and could not find a solution. They could not figure out why the ore star was shrinking when the void was calm and there were no black holes or void storms. There was a divine Lord Realm disciple who boldly raised a hypothesis. Could there be a powerful divine beast or a powerful godly king devouring this ore star? Without a doubt, this disciple was mocked by the other disciples. He was even criticized by the two divine blacksmiths for being too imaginative and whimsical. However, it was a fact that the ore star was shrinking. No one could think of a reason. The dozens of disciples urged the two divine blacksmiths to search the ore star and find out what was going on. Therefore, the two divine blacksmiths led the disciples and flew around the ore star on the divine ship. One day later, they found something. When they reached the other side of the ore star, they saw with their own eyes that there was a huge net of white light on the surface of the ore star. There were also two huge white vortexes. The net of white light was hundreds of thousands of miles wide. The two huge vortexes were also more than 10,000 miles wide. The two divine craftsmen came closer and observed carefully, only to discover that the light net and the two vortexes were the culprit. That whimsical disciple was right. Someone was indeed devouring this mineral star. The two divine blacksmiths were infuriated. As everyone knew, this mineral star was a famous mine nearby. Experts from more than 10 stars around would come here to collect resources. However, there was a tacit agreement between the many stars. As long as one had the strength and means, anyone could come here to collect resources and search for rare materials. However, they must not kill the goose that lays the golden eggs and catch all of them in one go. It was even more impossible for them to occupy this ore star and take all the resources for themselves. This method would incur the wrath of the masses, and he would be besieged by the experts of more than a dozen stars. Damn it! I want to see which blind bastard is so selfish that he wants to destroy everyone's mineral star. With this thought in mind, the two divine craftsmen steered the divine warship and landed on the star, stopping above the white light vortex. When the two sides were separated by 10,000 feet, they saw a white figure. It was a white-robed, black-haired young man of a foreign race. He was concentrating on casting a spell. Although they couldn't detect his strength and energy, however, judging from his appearance and temperament, he was definitely a god-king expert. What race is that? Do any of you know? One of the divine craftsmen stared at the white-robed young man for a while and asked the others with a puzzled expression. Everyone shook their heads, expressing their doubts and curiosity. I've never seen him before. He looks very thin and weak. What race is that? Why is he so ugly? Yes, he doesn't have any gorgeous colors, nor does he have a huge body, nor does he have sharp claws or wings. He doesn't even have fangs. He's the only one. Let's capture him and make him suffer everyone's anger. Although the two divine craftsmen couldn't see through the white-robed young man's cultivation, they were still a little hesitant. However, the dozens of young disciples were filled with righteous indignation and looked like they were going to get rid of a pest for the people. The two divine craftsmen didn't want to lose face in front of their disciples, so they had to show up and reprimand the white-robed young man. Swoosh, swoosh. The two divine craftsmen flew out of the divine warship and looked down at the white-robed young man. Where did this bastard come from? How dare he take the resources of the ore star? Bastards of the alien race, this ore star belongs to everyone. No one dares to take the ore star for themselves. You have angered everyone. Get out of here. In fact, Ji Tianxing had already sensed the divine warship when it was 100,000 miles away from the surface of the ore star. He thought that the evil soul divine king had come to seek revenge, so he waited quietly. Who would have thought that two ugly foreign race elders would pop out and curse at him as soon as they opened their mouths? He immediately stopped casting spells and opened his eyes to look at the two divine craftsmen and the divine warship. Did the evil soul divine king send you here? Do you think you can avenge others with your insignificant strength? The two divine craftsmen were stunned and asked in confusion, Evil soul divine king? Avenge others? What do you mean? Listen up, you bastard. We're famous divine blacksmiths on the flying deer planet. I am divine craftsman Yang Liang and this is divine craftsman Wen Chou. We are here to teach our disciples how to mine ores and identify different types of divine metals. We have nothing to do with the people you are talking about. We just can't stand you breaking the rules and selfishly taking the ore star for yourself. Although the two divine craftsmen were furious, they did not lose their minds. They did not want to be misunderstood by Ji Tianxing and start a fight. Therefore, they revealed their identities and intentions, hoping that the other party would back off. But unfortunately, their hopes were destined to be dashed. Yang Liang, Wen Chou. Divine craftsman? Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, you want to be a busybody? Then you should at least consider your own strength. Don't get yourself into trouble. With that, he continued to cast the devouring divine ability to devour the star's energy. The two divine craftsmen were humiliated by him in front of their disciples and were instantly enraged. Bastard, how dare you be so arrogant? Bastard from the alien race, if I don't teach you a lesson, you will not know your place. The two divine craftsmen were enraged and were about to take out their weapons and attack Ji Tianxing with their divine abilities. At this time, Ji Tianxing did not even raise his head. He waved his hand and threw out 3 giant golden swords that were thousands of feet long, attacking the two divine craftsmen and the divine ship. Bam, bam, bam. In the next moment, the two divine craftsmen were hit by the giant golden swords and were sent flying back with blood spurting out of their orifices. The divine ship was also hit by the sword radiance and a huge hole appeared. The dozens of disciples in the divine ship were scared out of their wits. Scram! Ji Tianxing shouted coldly. Sorry to disturb. The two divine blacksmiths hurriedly wiped the blood off their faces, entered the divine warship, and fled in dejection. Bookhouse reading website.